I don't really enjoy hating people. It's not really a fun feeling, but at the same time, I'm gonna have some grievances, and this is a situation where I just kind of have to let it out for one reason or another. I'm sure this isn't exactly what anyone would have had in mind. I never had anything like this in mind. I kind of treated this idea as a last resort. So it's completely unscripted. I'm just rambling. I'm just ranting. I'm getting this all out of my head, and I will try to explain why later. I will say right now that I do feel bad that I can't really go in depth on a lot of things, either because I don't know how to articulate it, or just by the fact that this is all coming off the top of my head and I'm going entirely reliant on my memory, because this isn't really much of an expose. This is more so just a rant. It's genuinely just me ranting. So, Sue, or Suika, is an artist who I met on Twitter. She's got a pretty good sized following, kind of randomly blew up at some point last September, I believe, if I remember correctly, and I actually followed the night before she kind of exploded, which is kind of funny, but yeah, she had good art, and I followed for that, and when she announced the Discord server, I decided to join. I joined the server, I met some people, we ended up talking, which I never would have expected. We've confided in each other. I did see her as a friend at one point, and then things started deteriorating. Like, there were already potential issues, but I kind of ignored them because I didn't really know how to feel. I didn't want to be a problem. I just didn't want to be that guy, so I kept a lot of things to myself. And then a friend joined the server, and that's when things just hit the fan. Things got way worse after that, and by the end of it, I would eventually end up leaving because I thought that was better for both my friend and for her. We aren't really friends, and now I'm kind of here talking about it for no realistically good reason. At least it might seem that way, and it probably is, but again, this is just me ranting. So why, after 5 months, I think, am I still thinking about that? And it kind of just comes down to a lot of confusion that I have, just certain things from that whole experience that just doesn't sit right with me, and it would already be a weird enough feeling, but it's not like it just stopped after I left. It was like even after I left the server, like back in October, I think, things still kept happening relating to the server, especially between me and that friend that I mentioned. So I'm just going to do my best to recollect what I can, try to vent as much of it out as possible, because I just want to stop thinking about it. And I'm not going to pretend that I didn't do anything wrong. There's a bunch that I did wrong for sure, but I'm also not going to pretend that she couldn't have handled a lot of things a lot better, especially after some of the things that were said, and especially in hindsight. So I'm just hoping that by putting all of this out there, I can just get myself to not think about it anymore, because everything that I could have said has already been said, and it's just permanently out. So I'm just going to do my best, and that's all. This might be the most petty part of the whole rant, because things are going to be made into jokes. It's a server, everyone's friends, everyone's having a good time. Jokes are inevitable. They're going to be made, especially reoccurring jokes, and especially about certain members, and I was no exception. But some of the jokes made about me did kind of travel on a fine line, I think, for lack of a better word. A lot of the jokes surrounding me, or at least the most consistent one, was just objectifying me. Like, some of the things that one or two people have said about me were just... It gets to a point and it genuinely started to make me uncomfortable, but I didn't say anything at that time because I was new. I didn't want to be a buzzkill, and these were people that I liked, so I just rolled with the punches instead of saying anything. I just turned it into a joke, tried my best to laugh it off, and just kind of built on the joke to just, so everyone kept having fun. And I do remember Sue saying that if a joke was starting to get to me, or I thought it was going too far or starting to make me uncomfortable, that I should and could absolutely speak up about it and just let people know to stop that shit. But I really didn't feel confident in being able to do that, even at that time, when not even 2 minutes after saying that, she would also make those jokes. So yeah, I just kind of kept it to myself, and really the only reason I can even call it objectification was because at one point one server member ended up getting drunk, and we were all just talking, me and whoever was online at the time, and this person I guess noticed I was there. I don't remember what triggered this, but all I know is that he went, "Hey, I never realized before how much we objectify you, dude. I'm really sorry about that." And like, it was both funny and really sweet. He's actually the only person who ever actually brought that up, much less apologized for it. And he was plastered, which I think is a little bit telling, but again, I didn't think about it too much, and again, it was sweet. And besides that, I think most of the jokes were fine, but on that topic, it does lead into other things that probably made me uncomfortable. Like, one joke that I personally didn't mind, and for a good while, was me being the quote-unquote maid. I never took that too seriously. It's obviously just a silly joke. That was until someone commissioned Sue to make a drawing of me in a maid dress, and I did not know about it until a good while in, because for a little bit it was just teased as this surprise by her. And when I finally found out what it was, on one hand, I wouldn't be lying if I said that it didn't look really cute. On the downside, I really did not look forward to the potential reaction, and I think Sue actually picked up on my discomfort at the time, because she asked me if I wanted it posted in the server, and I didn't want to assume the worst or be like that guy, so I just said, nah, don't worry about it, just go ahead. And I definitely regretted it. I did not expect to feel so uncomfortable, and in hindsight, like, with like all this time, I just I feel like she just shouldn't have taken it, especially since I don't really have a Sona. The closest thing I have is this fucking shitty Undertale AU where Sans is replaced with Sonic, and he's not even all Sans. Like, that is a bunch of bullshit that's ready to be unpacked. It's cringe, and that's the closest thing I have because that's all I ever use to represent myself online. So when I actually did draw myself in quotations, it was just me. It was just my interpretation of myself. So that was basically just a drawing of me, and I didn't realize just how uncomfortable it would make me. But even that aside, it was still of me, and I feel like I should have been asked whether or not that thing should have been made to begin with. I feel like that's not unfair or entitled to say when it's based off of a real person. Because again, I don't have a Sona, it's just me. And this wouldn't be the first time that kind of courtesy or like common sense would be looked over. It wouldn't be the first time that a boundary would be crossed, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Actually, this would technically be the second time, but I will get to that. And back on that whole thing about me worried about being called a buzzkill, I'm not. I know that I'm justified in thinking that could have been the case because there have been times where I was told that I was taking things too seriously outside of times when I was genuinely getting upset or just being annoying. And then there was another time. It started with a bit involving Morse code, and at some point I just tried to see how far I could push it, but that also ended up going a bit too far, both in terms of execution but also after the fact, because referring to someone I was friends with at the time as a dog, because their Sona was kind of dog human thing, because some people are into that, so I just kind of rolled with that. And then she would make a joke about like actually fucking like dogs, just straight up dogs. And the first time it's like, see, I get the joke because you're taking it out of context on purpose. And then the joke was made a couple more times, and at that point it was just like uncomfortable. Like it just wasn't for me. When I did try to simmer down a little bit, when I did try to pull back on a lot of my actions, because I was just as raunchy. I was not just a part of the problem. I feel like there were times I was the problem. But when I wanted to back down a little bit, I would be called a prude. And it's not like I was the only one who had to deal with like certain negative effects of the jokes, because I used to playing these kinds of things off. Sue, on the other hand, I don't know whether it's because she's better at standing up for herself, but at the same time, it also feels like a weird double standard, all things considered, because part of the reason a lot of these jokes keep happening is that she obviously encourages them. She takes part in them, and she has a lot of fun with them. Up until they start being directed at her, and she has to deal with it for an extended period of time. For example, for comparison, I was dealing with like the jokes and objectification for weeks, almost months. She couldn't handle being called old for an hour, and I'm not sure if it's because she's insecure about it. I won't pretend to know, and I sympathize if that's the case, but at the same time, this was the kind of behavior that you endorse. It's also the kind of behavior you partake in. You can't be surprised and suddenly be offended when it gets turned on you. And it's not even the first time that that she would be upset in regards to a joke, because she was doing a bit with a bunch of other people. Like, one at a time, it would kind of sort of happen where she would, just tell them to call her mommy because, funny. And at some point, I ended up getting involved and I refused. And she did not like that. And she straight up DM'd me about it to complain about it, saying, "Oh, everyone else just went along with it. Why can't you? I had this lovely moment with someone else," and I felt pressured to just go ahead with it because she was older, she had a much larger following, and I considered her a friend, and I didn't want to upset her, so I caved in, and despite it making me uncomfortable and me not wanting to go with this particular joke, I just did it because it was easier than just standing my ground. And of course, when I eventually would start to stand my ground a little bit, I would not only go about it the wrong way, but it would end very, very badly. Yeah, on the topic of, on that particular topic of her being upset that I refused to go along with this joke, continuing off of like the whole mommy thing as just kind of a starting example, she got upset because I refused to call her mommy, and it just, in hindsight, it feels like she has this script in her head that you just have to unknowingly follow along with, and if you deviate from that script, she will get pissed off or she will not like you for some reason or another. It genuinely almost felt like if you didn't agree with her, then you were just automatically a problem. Like, for example, another ongoing bit is that, particularly with me and her, we would get into quote-unquote arguments, and sometimes they would get a little bit heated, but just at complete random, the argument would start to get serious. Like, she would take it personally and ask me what my problem was, and sometimes I do have an issue with her that I, turning into a joke and not really taking it that seriously. But then there are other times when I'm just sitting there confused, and it's not just me either. Like, she will try to say that, oh, all the arguments are just a joke, but then there are the times where it's like not a joke. At least it's not a joke to her, and she takes it seriously and she genuinely gets upset. And it also gets to the point where even when we are play joking, a lot of the people around us who are witnessing it can't tell that it's a joke. So it's kind of already bad enough that the people seeing it can't tell that it's a play joke or like a play fight. It's even worse if the person you're arguing with suddenly doesn't know whether or not it's serious or not, and then you're genuinely pissed off, and then we have to talk it out in DMs, and like, that's fine, at least it's settled, but it just kept happening. Same with a lot of other, like I mentioned, the jokes would eventually get to her. It just kept happening. Things would get too raunchy in the server and she'd have to like tone it down or apologize, and it just kept happening. And then there's another time that I remember where a disagreement she took really personally. So like, something was shared in, I think it was like a games channel or something, and it was some anime game, likely another gacha game that was upcoming, that was announced like last year, and we saw some gameplay. Me and this other guy, who I'm just gonna call Maurice for just to censor his name because I respect his decision to not really want to associate with me. Maurice noticed that a lot of, the animations and even some of the, at least what we could tell from the mechanics, seemed very similar to Spider-Man 2, specifically Marvel's Insomniac Spider-Man 2, which released for PlayStation 5 and of course came to PC. And specifically, a lot of it reminded him of symbiote Spider-Man. And Sue got really fucking pissed, and what could have just been a discussion about the game, she really didn't like that our first impressions weren't the best about the game, and tried to be like, oh, but Spider-Man is ripping off this game from a long time ago. I forgot the name. It's a really good game, but that's besides the point. It wasn't just a disagreement or just her being upset at our opinion, which would have been strange enough, but she got like really defensive about this game, and I don't understand why, because firstly, it's a first impression. Like, you can argue that we should wait for the game to come out, but that's what the trailers are for. They're supposed to build interest. It's not our fault that that's the first impression that we get. That's on the developers. And I even tried to like be a mediator and give the benefit of the doubt to both sides, and I even said myself, like, hey, maybe some things will change or the mechanics will be different when the game actually releases, but based on the only things that we can see, yeah, it kind of does look like it's taking a lot of inspiration from Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Not a direct ripoff, just eerily similar. And she got offended by that for some reason, or she just didn't like that for some fucking anime gotcha game of all things to be pissed off about. Oh, and this wouldn't be the first time that Maurice would low-key be treated like shit. And you know what, actually, I feel like this does kind of fit around here, because like I was told that he didn't like interacting in the server because he didn't feel like he could talk about the things he enjoyed. Because like, he was an up-and-coming Sonic fan, and turns out one of the people he invited was also a big Sonic fan. He knew jack shit about the franchise, and that was great for me, because, you know, I love a good excuse to nerd out about Sonic, but he couldn't feel like he could talk about his interests, because anytime he wanted to, and Sue was there, she would make some kind of sly remark about it, about how it was, you know, for kids, or bad, or whatever the fuck she said. And like, sure, it's a playful tease or a jab like the first time, or the second time, but when you say it every single time the topic is brought up, that's not a joke anymore. It's not funny anymore. You're just kind of being mean. That wouldn't even be the worst thing that poor dude has had to go through, and I genuinely feel bad for him because it's partially my fault. And back on the whole thing about her, like, seemingly having an imaginary script that people are supposed to follow, and if you don't follow it, she gets pissed off. She plays up like this fake ego supposedly for jokes, but at some point it just stops being a joke, you know? And it's like, it genuinely feels like things have to center around her, and if it doesn't, she gets upset. I still remember one time when things had gone overboard in the server again, and it was pretty rough, pretty raunchy. Things had gone overboard. Like, the first week, things were like probably at their worst, arguably, and you know, she apologized for it, she toned things down. Not too long after, a second apology had to be made, so this would have been the third one. But the thing is, all the moderators, except for one who obviously wasn't super active, and low-key was the only one who actually knew what the fuck they were doing and was actually good at the whole moderation thing, or at least the best at it. I guess second best would have been someone called Carp. All of us were willing to publicly apologize for encouraging the behavior that got out of control, and even stepped down, myself included. Sue insisted on taking the fall for us. Very noble, but, you know, some of us would still insist on just going ahead and apologizing, because, you know, we take responsibility for our actions. Is what we wanted to do, and if that meant like a blow to our reputation, so what? But she insisted on it. She went ahead with it. We kind of just agreed with it. And she apologized for it. And the rest of us were kind of... we were talking amongst ourselves, kind of making sure everybody was okay, essentially just kind of in damage control mode. And a little bit later, Sue would come into the moderator chat. I didn't say this earlier, but at this point I was a moderator. Doesn't matter, kind of, but that's why I was in the moderator chat. And she would not be happy because no one checked on her. And to an extent, I fully understand, because that was probably a lot of stress that she was going through. A lot of us were stressed, but her especially, because, you know, when you're kind of the face of all of it, it obviously kind of reflects back on you, especially when you're the only one apologizing for it and kind of taking, like, all of the blame for it. One tiny problem, I did DM her. It ended up in the wrong DM though, because of a stupid joke that she wanted to do. Because I don't read the names on my Discord, I usually memorize the profile pictures, because that's the first thing I see when I look at my screen. And when I tried to tell her that, and apologize for not checking on her sooner, even though I did intend to, she just kind of crossed her arms and whined. It just kind of blew me off and dismissed the apology, which, I mean, on one hand, fair enough, but it's not like she ever looked back on that or anything like that. It's not like she ever acknowledged that I at least tried. I was basically just left at, you didn't do good enough, go away. And to everyone else, just the long and short of it was just kind of calling us ungrateful, because, you know, she took the full blame for all of us when we were all ready to apologize for our own mistakes and own up to it. She didn't have to do that. She insisted on it. She put herself there. So it becomes a lot less noble when you're demanding recognition for it. Especially since some of us were still kind of shaken up about the tension in the situation, as non-serious as it would sound, because come on, it's fucking Discord. I'm pretty sure, like, most people wouldn't consider this very serious unless you were in the moment or way too invested. Yeah, it just rubs me the wrong way, the way she went about it. Another weird thing she ended up doing later on, like after I left the server, like, she described talking to me as, like, compared talking to me to getting her teeth pulled out. And I assumed that meant that she didn't enjoy talking to me, so I didn't talk to her unless she reached out first. We hadn't spoken in 2 weeks, she came to check on me at some point, and when I wanted to check on her back, she asked, "Why do you care?" As if she didn't tell me that she doesn't like talking to me. And she's surprised that I didn't speak to her for 2 weeks? I don't know what goes on in her head, I really don't. If it's just like a one-time thing, but no, this is just how she is. It's consistent, and I don't know how else to feel about it besides mildly frustrated, even if it's probably not her fault. And then there was another time that she got upset, and it was because she thought I was calling the server a fandom, or just dumbing it down to just that. All I was saying was that I jump from fandom to fandom, and I was just bringing up that I go from place to place. That was all I was saying. If I ever left the server, there was a good chance that I would be back. That was when I was on, on fine enough terms, and I don't understand why that set her off to the point where, like, she made this big fucking speech about how, oh, it's not just a fandom, it's a family and all that. And again, given how she acts sometimes, it's one hell of a family. It's also just really hard to talk with Sue sometimes because, like, she can just switch on a dime, and I get that people can be emotional. I can be emotional, but me being emotional doesn't grant me any leeway. So, as much as I want to give the benefit of the doubt, she's just really. Trying to talk to her is extremely convoluted and confusing. Like, she's not very clear in what she wants to say. Like, she'll dance around the problem constantly sometimes and just expect you to know what the hell she's talking about. And that won't be more apparent than later, but I do want to bring it up because I have to point out that she is an extremely convoluted and confusing person to engage with and to understand. A lot of the times it's totally fine. It's why I didn't feel the need to complain too much or even like vent all of this frustration out until right now, because for the longest time the good outweighed the bad. I was having fun. Everything was relatively okay and we could each like look past each other's shortcomings. And then shit would hit the fan. Partially, more so start a slow descent. Oh yeah, remember that little joke I mentioned earlier about Sue that was the reason I ended up clicking the wrong DM? It was because someone else was pretending to be her as like a joke, but, you know, oh, there's two Sues in the server, so she had the profile and the banner and whatnot, but again, profile's what matters because that's what I looked at first. So, who was the other person? That would be my friend. Mint is a longtime friend of mine, and while they do go under a different name now, I will just be referring to her as Mint for consistency's sake. Me and Mint met like 4-5 years ago, and we became close friends, but I'm not going to assume anything besides that because, well, I just kind of leave that up to her. But we have known each other for a while, and we had a lot of similar interests and even some similar hobbies. She's a great artist, and one that, despite fueling a small part of myself who's insecure about my own art, she is extremely talented, and I do acknowledge that, and I admire that about her. Mint joining the server was actually not even supposed to happen, and that's not even a joke. Mint didn't join the server naturally. She actually joined the server through me. At one point, me and her were talking in a VC, and I kept bringing up some funny things that happened in the server, and despite a lot of things that did kind of, you know, wave a very small red flag for me, I did, you know, explain that it was kind of fun, very chaotic, and that I was having a good time. I made it sound fun, so at some point she asked me if she can join, and I've known her for years, and no offense to everyone who was there, but based on the jokes that were made, the behavior that was going on, the kinds of people that were there, I legitimately could not think of a worse place for her to be. So for the first time, without any hesitation or double thinking, when she asked me that, I just said no. I didn't want to invite her to the server because I didn't want to risk her getting uncomfortable, because there are a lot of things that I know would have, you know, happened that would have made her uncomfortable. Things that she's told me that makes her uncomfortable based on certain behaviors, things that people have said to her in the past, and especially comments regarding her voice. Now, I have asked a couple times if I could join a server in the past, just because she made it sound fun, and she shut me down, and I just relinquished and I moved on. For some reason, she refused to let it go, and she just kept asking me, and at one point offered, hey, I'm not going to be there for that long, I just want to be there once, because I want to make a joke with you. And the joke was essentially just going to be me being in a VC, which didn't happen super often back then. It was before like daily VCs. But I would eventually join the VC. I would summon her as like a reference to Maharaga, and then we just start arguing and starting chaos for a bunch of fun. And it was only supposed to be for a joke, and she kept asking me, so I caved because she's my friend and I didn't want to be upset and I didn't want to seem unreasonable, so I sent her the invite, she joined the server, and she just kind of stayed quiet there for a good while. And while there were a couple VCs between then, there wasn't really a chance to bring her on because she was usually busy around those times. Eventually, we would get to pull off the joke, and it was hilarious, honestly. It was a great old time, and she wanted to do it again, and I was like, hey, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe I overreacted. And unfortunately, the next time we would join a VC would also be the day that she met Sue. Now, I know that probably sounds over dramatic, but this was kind of like the first major thing that happened after Mint joined the server. We were all in a VC, and it was the first time that me, Sue, who was a more recent friend at the time, and Mint, who was my longtime friend, were all in this VC together, along with, several other people, obviously. And, me and Mint would still be bickering and occasionally just normal conversation stuff. And at one point, Sue finally joins the call. And up until this point, Sue was... I had alluded to Mint in private conversations with Sue, saying how there were, a couple of similarities that I noticed between them. And obviously, now I know that those similarities were incredibly superficial. But that aside, things were relatively okay, but at some point, certain jokes started being made at my expense. And something that I want to say is that one thing that Mint ended up saying before she joined was that, hey, people are making jokes about you, it's starting to bother you, if I'm there, I'll just shut that shit down. And at some point during the VC, I don't remember if it was something that Sue said or if Mint initiated it, but a joke would be made at my expense, and it would strike pretty hard. It would hit me pretty hard. It was a pretty personal hit, whether intentional or not, and that joke would actually, catch on with everyone else in the VC, and the joke itself I could have at least brushed off, but the fact that it was Mint who initiated it and pushed for it, I completely shut down. I don't remember exactly what the joke was, but I will try to find it, and maybe I took it too personally, but after weeks of being objectified, and then suddenly the one person I trusted to not do that suddenly just also endorsing that and throwing fuel into the fire, it hurt, and I really didn't feel anything for a good bit. I just went completely silent. Mint would continue talking with everyone else. Sue would eventually leave, and whenever someone tried to address me, particularly Mint, because, yeah, despite having a bunch of fun, realistically, Mint was kind of just the only one who would talk to me unless I was just being annoying and intruding on someone else's conversation. But, Mint would, talk to me, and I could only really give brief responses because I really didn't feel like talking anymore. But I also didn't feel like I could leave because I felt like if I left, then I would seem butthurt, or I would feel like a buzzkiller. I would just feel bad because maybe I was taking it too seriously. And then, Mint seemed to have picked up that something was wrong and that I was upset, and she asked if I was okay. And her asking me if I was okay legitimately just caused me to break. I started crying because for the last several weeks, despite me playing it off and obviously treating everything like a joke, it clearly had some kind of subconscious effect on me, constantly like having jokes made at my expense and constantly being objectified, so that when she asked me if I was okay, especially after that, I just could not hold it back anymore. I started crying, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I composed my voice as best as I could, told her, yeah, I'm okay, but in DMs, I told her the truth about how I felt, and she spent the rest of that time in VC either talking about something that she knew I couldn't resist talking about, or trying to cheer me up in some way. And when the VC ended and everyone left, we joined our own private VC, and she just spent the rest of the night trying to cheer me up, and we watched a movie together. And during that movie, I ended up reaching out to Sue and telling her how I felt and how I was affected, how I ended up crying. And she did apologize because, at this point she, actually felt remorse for her actions. And it was just, at the time, I hoped it would just be a one and done thing, but in hindsight, it was just the first domino to fall. It just, I sometimes worry that I take Mint for granted because I do not understand how anyone could be that patient with me. Jesus Christ. But yeah, that whole situation was settled. It's fine now, at least it would be fine for the time being. And side note, the movie that me and Mint were watching was The Long Walk. Fantastic movie, highly recommend. But as time went on, things got more awkward, and this is going to be the first little snippet where I have to admit a lot of it was kind of on me, or just definitely on me, because whenever Mint would be in VC, I would start to act up and try to get her to pull back, because I noticed certain habits being made and certain comments, and while she did lean into it, I did kind of worry about her getting uncomfortable. And you might think that, hey, if she's into it, then there shouldn't be a problem, but that only added on a new issue, which was sheer confusion, because now she's engaging and encouraging the same behavior that she absolutely despises, So now I'm trying to figure out where this change happened, and Sue would try to tell me that I just didn't know her as well as I thought, or something like that. And I would eventually be proven right. uh, because she would, let me know after I had left that, things were still a bit strange in the server and she had been made uncomfortable a couple times, but yeah, I still could have handled a lot of how I felt a lot better, probably talk to her about it a little bit better. And I want to bring that up because, like, that was me on one side, and obviously Sue was trying to, push her to be more forward or something on the other side, and eventually she just couldn't stand the two of us. She hated talking to both of us at one point, and eventually, as my own part, because because Mint would end up intentionally injuring herself in a non-lethal way, of course, but it did happen. And again, Sue will brought this up later on in a later conversation, and I'm going to repeat, she has no fucking idea what that was like, because when that happened, me and Minz were in a VC, so I got to hear that happen. I had to live through that live. Sue wasn't even supposed to know. Mint said that she doesn't even know why she told her. And I was caught between apologizing and trying to talk her down, because I was obviously worried. I never wanted something like that to happen because she was still my friend. I still cared about her. I was just overwhelmed with guilt, and I just wanted her to be okay, and that I feel like that whole thing was arguably the worst thing that I ended up being involved with when it came to Mint, and I still feel terrible about it. Like, I always feel bad about even minor things when it comes to like killing motivation or frustrating her because I don't understand something on the first try. But that was genuinely scary to go through because it was happening in real time and I was aware of that, and I don't think anything could compare to that. The reason why I brought up that story was because of something else that Sue had done. Because a little bit before, when me and Sue were on quote-unquote good terms, by this point I genuinely didn't know whether or not I could call Sue a friend. So it was kind of in the air and up to her. If she said we were friends, then we were friends, but in my end, I didn't really fucking know. But we were getting along, and at some point I told her where I lived. It was like a little game, just guess where we were. And after that incident with Mint injuring herself happened, Sue DM'd me about it, and she said that if Mint ever hurt herself again, that she would, essentially beat me up. And it wasn't exactly like a funny thing. She doubled down saying, oh, I've spent hundreds of dollars on VTubers. I waste money on dumb shit. You think I'm not crazy enough to get on a plane and fly over just to beat your ass? And I just didn't know how to feel about that, and I just said straight up, hey, if you do that, I will defend myself. I do not care if I end up hurt in the process. But she just laughed it off. Like, I said I would defend myself, and she just shrugged it off like it was nothing. You admit that your intention was to scare me. And the only thing that felt worse than that was when I told Mint about it, she said it was my fault for telling her what state I lived in. Like, my bad for trusting someone I thought it was a friend. And I still think about that, and it's why I'm far more reserved now. And again, the way that Sue acts, it's why it took way too long for me to eventually vent out everything else that I could have said, and why I just kind of got more snappy, because I could not trust her. I didn't feel like I could trust her. I was not comfortable being honest with her, because every time I was, it was taken advantage of and used against me. This is going to be a part that I summarize and also just kind of like occasionally directly read over, because my memory alone cannot do it justice. That whole incident where Mint injured herself was also the day that I kind of let everything out for Sue, and it was at the same time I was trying to make sure that Mint was okay. Sue ended up messaging me worried because Mint had ended up leaving the server as well because she had felt bad. Me and Sue argued for a bit. She said to wait until she got home because she was driving at the time. I was being very blunt because I was more worried about Mint at the time. I really just wanted to focus on that, but Sue wanted to talk. She threatened to block me at some point, and I tried to explain that I had nothing to do with Minty's state, which I can't help but still feel guilty about, because I'm trying to figure out whether or not she's okay, but I also don't even really remember what set her off. She just felt bad, and then just one moment we were fine because we were in VC, and then the next it just happened. I tried to explain that I didn't tell Mint to leave, and it was actually the opposite. I wanted to leave because at some point I was like, I decided it would have been better if Mint was just there on her own, because I don't know. She seemed to be enjoying herself, and regardless on how I felt or my own paranoia, it was probably for the best. Not to mention, I had been getting really snappy and abrasive at the time. I tried to apologize. Sue said that I shouldn't need to apologize because it shouldn't have happened in the first place, which, in hindsight, really funny coming from her, but Jesus Christ. And this other thing that pisses me off in hindsight, as much as it hurts to read through all this again, she said that she tried to take it slow. No, she fucking didn't. After the first incident, and she apologized to both of us, and Mint had to calm her down because she's just nice like that. Mint dove head first, and that ended up screwing us over anyway, because that was when she decided to do the joke. And what do you know? The joke where they doubled up and there were 2 Sues. And what do you know? Shit hit the fan. She had to apologize. And when I tried to check on her, oh, there we go. Wrong fucking person. She says that she's being composed and I really didn't want to put up with her. So I just said, hey, if you're gonna wring my neck, give it a good twist. She said, shut up with the woe is me. I trusted you. I trusted you, too. And, oh boy, you want to talk about spitting in my face, sleepless nights. You have no idea what I've been putting up with since I left. Hell, since the last time we spoke. But again, that is something for fucking later. We kept talking. She was essentially interrogating me. And again, on one hand, you can't blame her. On the other hand, I pointed out that she didn't seem to care about any of this until Mint actually left. She ragged on me about getting along and whatnot, and again, I was being abrasive in the VC. Can't really blame her so much for that. And at some point, that's when I was honest. She started ranting about me. We were fine with the joking. Minty came for the VC, switch flipped on me, and she was on me about, not telling her what to do. And that's when I said, I see the pattern. I'm not a dumbass as much as you treat me like I am. There's a reason why the last time you asked if I was okay, I said one day I won't have a reason to be afraid to. Because, believe it or not, I'm afraid of you. I'm afraid of being honest with you. I sugarcoat my feelings with Mint because I care about her. I sugarcoat how I feel with you because honesty almost ruined everything. I got told to shove my emotions and be an adult, and then I get told by someone else that I should be allowed to feel, and I can't fucking do both because yes, Sue told me to stow my emotions and keep them in check, which the only real way to actually do that is to just withhold said emotions. Mint wanted me to be more honest, which is why I told her whenever something was, starting to concern me. I can't make both of them happy. I couldn't. And this is why. She tried to say I didn't tell you to shove your emotions, I told you to keep them in check. Not let them get the better of you, not spiral, that's what I said, but oh boy would this lead to one of my worst spirals at the fucking time. She said, I'm fucking done, I'm tired of this, invite her back, which is something she's going to repeat a lot. One thing that's going to be consistent about this is that she insists that the reason she wants Mint back is because it's good for Mint. And considering how Mint felt about the server and how she feels about certain people now, I either that was a lie to protect her own ego because she just couldn't stand the fact that Mint wasn't there for some reason, or she just failed miserably. And I don't want to interrupt. It feels like the only reason I'm bringing up stuff I wanted to talk about later now is because I want to stall, because I don't want to read this. She brings up to me that Mint won't come back unless I say it's okay, because, she cares about my opinion. And Sue will at some point say that Mint is, she makes fun of the idea that Mint would be like, oh, fuck whatever ST says, I'm gonna do my own thing. And says that mocking me as if that's not something she would do. But that's exactly what she does. All the time. That's kind of normal. So, yeah, the fact that she was this steadfast about staying away from the server, all I could do was insist that she stay. She make her own choice. I didn't want to make that call for her. That doesn't come until later. She asks if I want to be a smartass. I say that I'm being civil. She says that she's being composed, but she's already threatened to block me and run herself off the road, which, yeah, that was the thing. This is me being composed. And when she said, I said, my apologies if my aggression feels unwarranted, but I'd rather let that tiny bit of steam than fucking explode from the pressure. And she said, go off then, tell me what you really feel. Go on. And I said, not making that mistake again, because again, I couldn't trust her. I don't trust her. And that, she said, no, say it, last chance.
Say it. Don't hold back. And I said, why? You'll block me? Then you wouldn't know. Ban me? You'd have to convince Mint to come back just because I'm going to keep telling her it's her choice until she tells me to fuck off. And then she says she never will tell you to fuck off, which again, fucking lie. She only cares about how I feel when it's too late. It's a consistent thing. She's very nice, but she's as stubborn as I am. It's just all of us. We're not great to each other. I tried to say that I'll leave the server because I'm clearly not handling things well, and you're fine. And I got told to fuck off. I told her not to leave. She told me to fuck off. And she asked, why is she waiting on me to come back? And I said, hell if I know at this point. Then she finally decided to calm down. And Mint, this is when I relay to her that Mint said that she promised, and that was all I got as for why she didn't want to come back. Which, again, very late to actually keep your promise when you've kind of just been telling me to fuck off the entire time already, but hey, that's neither here nor there, because I'm the bigger asshole, so what I says don't fucking matter. She told me off for how I acted, and again, completely justified. But again, this is also where she said she said she would have just said, nah, I don't give a fuck what ST feels, I'll do my own thing. She asked if that's what I thought was gonna happen, and yeah, that's exactly what happened for weeks up until this point. She said I've been trying to convince her to put her happiness first for once. She won't do it. She doesn't care about anyone else's but yours, and you're squandering that, and I hate you for that. And she has been putting her happiness first. It's the only reason she's stuck around this long. In fact, my happiness has kind of always come second, and I'm not going to pretend that that's not the case. I don't need pity for that. That's just the truth. But again, everyone right now is in an emotional state, so there's just more arguing, and again, understandable complaints. I couldn't hold a legitimate VC for her. And then Sue genuinely starts begging me to tell Mint to come back. She says to sidestep my ego, which is again irony. And then another ironic thing, if she says if you have any fucking shred of decency left, if you give a shit about anything I say anymore, sidestep your ego and tell her to come back. This isn't about me. Really? Again, she wasn't supposed to be there because it wasn't a good place for her to begin with. Not with those kinds of people, and I would end up being right because she'd end up complaining to me. This is clearly had nothing to do with my ego. You keep insisting that the server is the best thing for her. Like it's you keep bringing that up, and it's hard for me to not see that it's just that you can't stand that she's not there. It has nothing to do with her. And the closest I can assume that you did actually care is because of a recent interaction, where even then, part of me wonders if it's more because you hate me than it is care about her. She asked, what do I want from her? And I'm just honest with her and say, I don't know what I want anymore. Because I don't know what to say. I just want to be honest, but no matter how much you reassure me, I'm going to be too scared because of the one time she absolutely went off on me. A time that I genuinely don't remember well enough to go and look for. It's like I blocked it out of my memory. And she insists that I tell her, and so I do. Long story short, Minty wasn't supposed to stay in the server for long because this was her idea as well. She was going to be summoned for a one-off joke, but she ended up sticking around. A mix of no one starting a VC, and I want to do that again because we had a blast. Eventually you two would meet, and bada bing, bada boom, you two hit it off, which was great. I expected that and even excited for it. Then things got off. Obviously there was the first VC with Minty, but we managed to move past that, but then things escalated. At first I assumed I was just jealous of the amount of attention she was getting in general, the praise, and so on and so forth. I was just the punching bag, and she was practically a goddess. To elaborate on that, whenever Mint showed up, it would feel like I was less part of the joke and more like I was the joke, which, you know, led back to the stuff I mentioned earlier about being objectified. But then beyond that, I kind of felt like I picked up on a weird favoritism that you had for Mint. I thought again that I was just jealous, you were hitting it off well, and that's what I wanted. Right, so why am I so unnerved? Then over time, the pedestal you seemed to put Minty on grew higher and higher, which was strange, because not that long before, you mentioned she had no skin in the server, so the rate of attachment caught me off guard. I knew she was approachable, but I started to see a Mint that I don't think I recognized. I don't mean acting, I mean this wasn't something she'd do even as a joke. It's not her personality or humor. I know her, at least I thought I did. She's dealt with people who acted like this, people who react the same way some of you do to her voice. She's expressed disdain for these kinds of actions, so why does she go along with it? Again, I had to ask myself, am I just jealous? This is all just a joke, of course, so just keep it to yourself, they're hitting it off well, all while I started to feel isolated by my own friends. But I kept picking up on things that just felt random, like you'd give Mint options and perks in the server during drawing streams that no one else would be offered. It genuinely felt like a strange outlier, and the reason I brought that up is because there were people that Sue knew much better and were much closer with. So again, in my eyes, it seemed like she was just picking favorites with Mint. It felt like a strange outlier, but I kept convincing myself that I was just crazy, and it was a conflict of you're just jealous, shut up, and this is really uncharacteristic special treatment that led me to being passive-aggressive because I was ironically arguing in my own head to keep my mouth shut, but also didn't think about the fact that I wanted to participate in the VC. Then there was the flirting, a little awkward, but I chalked it up to my connection to Mint sort of blurring the line a bit. But the way you went about it, here's the thing, I know you'd say, oh, it's nothing you and me haven't done, or it's the same way you and I interact, which I guess it's in a similar ballpark, but again, I know Mint. It's the way you went about it that just reminded me of the kind of people Mint hated, the ones she despised meeting, the people who made her uncomfortable and want to hide her voice. It's something she hates even as a joke, and yet she was reciprocating. It was confusing, awkward, and the longer it went on, the more uncomfortable it was. It's a bit I've heard all too many times. Then the bits started to explode. They didn't just breach containment, it was every single day. Hell, it even make it onto Twitter and on and on and on. I feel like if a bit gets to a point where you have to genuinely apologize to someone because they couldn't tell it was being played up, because as irrational and obviously a joke as it is, people do still unironically act like that, then I think the bit went too far, and this was a reference because even on her Twitter, that's where some jokes would be, and she ended up genuinely worrying some random fellow artist under a post because of some giveaway thing. It was obviously meant to be a joke, but like they couldn't tell for a bit. And oh boy, does that especially count towards the flirting and teasing. I'm almost glad I felt like an asshole, because stepping back and just watching made me go, oh, this is the exact same shit that Sue had to apologize for twice, but with less GIFs and expanding beyond the server. And you guys go hard, like really hard, and I'm pointing this out from an outside perspective because by this point, I started, you know, again, pulling back. The last couple days, y'all were bouncing on incest like it was your papa's dick. I had a fucking way with words. It's fucking cringe. Yeah, it's not real, it's obviously all for jokes and fantasy fetishes, but it's kind of ironic to bring that up on multiple occasions when you felt bad because you made a bad impression or had a bad impression made of you due to your previous behavior. Stepping back gave me a chance to think like an outsider looking in, and whenever shit got flirty or heated, if it escalates, then it becomes a very thing that people complained about in the past, and again, the same exact behavior, if not similar behavior, to week one that you promised not only privately, but publicly to tone down. And oh boy, that bad impression thing is gonna come back to kick the ass later. I'm not trying to be a damn prude, but sweet Mary and Joseph Christ, the horniness somehow only got more intense after the apologies. The only thing stopping people from being uncomfortable is that 1, people are joining in at a much slower rate now, and there's a lot of people who are inactive in general, and 2, you're all fucking horn dogs, calling myself out here as well. And 3, people might actually be joining because of your horny posting on Twitter. The sacred 4th reason is just people are just into it. And who do I see caught in the middle of it from time to time? Mint. It's just between close friends or people with chemistry. You didn't even know Mint if Mint was that kind of person. She really isn't. The way that you specifically talk to her, the way that you try to initiate something, the way you talked about her, again, just got more and more uncomfortable the longer it went on. No matter what she did or said, you'd end up turning it into something horny, especially in VC, and she just lets you. And this is me referencing the fact that Mint would just try to start a normal conversation or say something normal, and Sue would turn it into something freaky or some kind of bit, and Mint would just go along with it despite it being the same behavior that she's explicitly stated to me that she hates. Which is why it got me so confused. It's why it fucked up everything that I thought I knew, and it's why I started getting more irrational, why I got to be such an asshole. She reciprocates, she enables you. I watch her act like someone she isn't for the bit. How do you think I feel watching the same behavior we just reprimanded be repeated with my best friend involved now? I don't care about my infamy because I'm already a freak. I'm already someone with a somewhat tainted reputation, but Mint, she doesn't have that and she doesn't deserve that. That's why I was so hesitant to even have her join the server to begin with, because while the chaos is fun, you guys don't know when to hit the brakes. I don't need her being lumped and dragged down if anyone were to see you at your worst. I love you guys, I love the server, I really do, but I have to be a little self-aware. Being an outcast isn't an excuse to be a brainlet. And I suppose on that note, the flirting with Mint part was only a small taste of what I felt about how you flirt with her, because that made her reciprocation all that much more annoying. You seem to latch on to Mint, like really fucking hard. I don't know what it is or why, but you genuinely seem obsessed with Mint to an unhealthy and uncomfortable degree. That go thing, which was just them hanging out, this is the only part that I feel like I overreacted to. It was just them just hanging out in some fucking low poly comfort game or whatever. But at the time, again, dealing with a lot of shit, and this was the one thing where I think my irrationality finally kicked in. That blurred the line between bit and obsession. You're literally begging me to let her back in, and I genuinely can't tell if you genuinely want this for her or if you can't stand the thought of her not being there. And for once I could confirm I wasn't crazy, because in an offhand conversation with someone else, who mind you was checking on me because they could sense tension between us, even said that from their perspective, the flirting tended to get excessive, and a reason that people tend to insist on the idea of roleplay despite it being banned. Newsflash, if the flirting is a joke and you're playing a role, that is role play. Calling roleplay a bit to save your own ass will only go on for so long, because realistically all that changed is that there's less gifs involved in the flirting besides kissing, but you just ignore the things that haven't really changed because you're having fun, and so is Mint, right? Right? Mint has expressed her discomfort at times. She keeps telling you to behave and meaning it, and you still somehow manage to make it weird, because yeah, Mint eventually did actually try to tell her to stop a couple times. I wouldn't be surprised if the only reason you put up with me this long is because she tells you to. You think I'm the only person she does things for? The only person she'll change for or react for? I know I said you two were similar, but the reason you found it almost uncanny, like looking in a mirror, is because she is like a mirror. She reflects what's directed at her. She reciprocated because she feels like she has to, because it's entertaining. She does it to entertain you guys. This isn't how she normally is, not even as a joke. Her doting comfort tone is an act. She plays it all up. You can read people. You can read a tone. You already noticed that, I'm sure. She's a people pleaser, which wasn't meant to be an insult. It's even how she's described herself. I want her to have fun. I really do. I know everything she feels is only a fleeting moment to her, and I want her to be herself. But I just wanted her to be herself, not to just bend to whatever antics you guys were up to that day. And mind you, this is just me bringing up the flirting going overboard in general and how it's barely any better before, and your unnerving attachment and behavior with Mint as her friend and an outsider. This isn't bringing up other personal things like the lack of foresight or your general coldness over incidents recently. I would never have guessed that you cared about me after the fact, or that you thought I was avoiding you unless I was told or that you asked. You kept telling me to be an adult and how childish I am, but you're older than me and you choose to act like a teen chasing their first high. I don't know what I want, but I know how I feel, and I'm very conflicted, confused, and concerned, not just for you or Mint, but for the server as a whole. Again, I'm not being a prude, but what was even the point of apologizing and making the no RP rule if people see you acting like that and immediately think of roleplay? What's there to be sorry for at that point? Am I crazy for thinking that now that I'm the one looking from a new perspective? Sue would thank me for saying all of that. I couldn't tell if it was sarcasm, but she did appreciate that I finally told her all this, and she even said that she would talk to the others about the roleplay and her own behavior and get a gauge on that, which I still haven't forgotten the time that she told me it wasn't my business. But for now, focusing on the actual conversation, it's hard to remember where my headspace actually was during that, and she keeps saying that this is for her sake, this is for my sake. She says I'm not trying to berate you here, even though she's doing exactly that. And we talked things out, and about this conversation where I eventually started to spiral, because at some point during this conversation I started to feel bad, and it started when, you know, ironically she threatened me. At some point she said I'd as soon as burn myself than hurt her. I hope you know that. If you don't, you know now. I need to know if you're comfortable with that moving forward. I need to tell me now if you're not. She's referring to her relationship with Mint, because if we have a repeat of what happened and she hurts herself again, I swear to God, I will find a way to physically hurt you. I'm not even joking. Distance is nothing. I spent $1,000 on a bit. You think I wouldn't spend double, triple for her? Don't test me that. And again, when I took that to heart, she would try to play it off. I'm going to remind that. I said I never wanted Mint to hurt herself. I was worried, sick, and don't ever threaten me again, or worse, follow through with that threat, because I do not mind going to prison. I don't appreciate the threat. I don't appreciate you saying it like it's on me, like I don't have any fucking remorse. You didn't have to try and calm her down. You didn't have to stay up all night praying and hoping to a god who might not exist that you get to wake up and then she'll still be there. You didn't have to fucking hear her, Sue. Be as protective as you want. Nothing will compare to that fear. The guilt. And if one of us were to go, I'd want it to be me, so that she has to get a chance for the life she never had. I obviously started to get emotional. I was feeling guilty and kind of pressured, because again, big creators, someone I considered a friend, even if I didn't trust them fully at this point anymore. I don't know what the fuck was going on between us here, but it's not like we hated each other. I don't know. And that's the thing. I never know anything about Sue. And that's fine, because, you know, stranger on the internet. But it's another thing when you're trying to be genuine with someone. And I just don't know. I really don't know how to feel or explain it. And honestly, looking at this back hurts. And again, it doesn't help to think that the only reason she wants Mint to be there is for herself, because she admitted that she was envious when initially she left, because she left after like the first incident when her, like the day she and Mint met, she ended up leaving out of guilt. We could have handled this so much fucking better. And Sue said to try being more supportive, and I just kept spiraling, and I started venting out a bunch of frustrations and self-doubt, how I kept slipping, and she kept insisting that this is what she needed, and the longer I kept spiraling, the more I started to believe what Sue said, even if in hindsight it wasn't. But I was so worried about her. And I just felt awful. At one point, Sue said, "I promised you I wouldn't do anything to hurt her." I guess she technically kept that promise. I promised that I would protect her and have faith in her, even though she's honestly really great at taking care of herself. I don't know anyone stronger than Mint. And Sue insisted that I just tell her to join because Mint wouldn't listen to her. She insisted that I tell her to join, and again, I vented out. I had to come with the terms that I've been hanging out with Mint for 3 years and that she doesn't need me anymore. She's found, other people, because for the longest time, she did interact with other people, but I was the only person she really talked to consistently. So, between the guilt of her hurting herself and the shit that Sue was saying, I just kept falling further, thinking about every single thing that I did wrong. Sue and I would kind of find some kind of common ground, and, she tried to use her experience to help me out a little bit, and she even offered therapy. At the time, it really was sweet. I can't help but look at so much of this in hindsight and still have to question how much of it was genuine because of the shit that would happen later. We kinda close things off. The only other notable things back on the quote-unquote joke, she brought up that she had, experience with that kind of thing. I don't know. I know that you've done a lot of wild shit. It's just probably not a flex. She said she'll try to be as unbiased and objective as she could, which... hell if I know if that was actually a promise that she kept. Wouldn't get me started on... at some point she ended up seemingly being offended by the fact I referred to Mint as a people pleaser or a mirror, when, again, not only is that something Mint said about herself on her own terms, but here's a fun little fact. Mint was in VC the entire time I was typing all of that out, and I read it out loud to her. I asked her if I got anything wrong, if anything I said was inaccurate, if I misunderstood something, because I wanted to know the truth and I wanted her perspective on it as well. And if I got something wrong, I wouldn't suddenly just twist it so I'm still in the right. I wanted to know what I did wrong so that I could also address that. If I misunderstood something, I wanted to say clearly that I did misunderstand it. So I ran it through Mint and asked if she was sure that this was okay, and she said it was okay. I don't know if she was doing it just to be nice. All I know is that I got her approval before I sent it, so I could send it in at least decent confidence, because she was someone I trusted and still do trust. So it is a little bit ironic to be upset on her behalf when she was there and knew what I had written, but hey, it's complicated nuances and shit, am I right? Because my thoughts were such a jumbled mess even as I was reading through it that I couldn't actively, format what I was trying to say cohesively. Yeah, trying to read through that was actually kind of painful, and I decided to just go to sleep and give myself time to relax because I was genuinely starting to cry. I don't know if it was nostalgia, guilt, or any other number of things, but I needed to take a break from the rant. I decided to just continue whenever I was ready. Now, restarting the recording and thinking about it with a clear head, she almost seems reasonable. It almost feels like it is genuinely coming from a good place, because I'm rereading it, and despite everything, it, it feels like she's being reasonable, but then more shit would happen later on, and I have to look back at this and wonder if I was, like, manipulated. Like, if my guilt just stopped me from trying to look at this more rationally, because I was undergoing a lot of emotions, and I was worried about Mint and what she could possibly be going through, and Sue was obviously pissed off. I was not really in a good spot to, like, try and think, so I just started ranting, like, bringing up things that Sue honestly had no business in knowing, but for some reason I felt like I had to admit to what I had done wrong. I don't know if it's because I could trust her. I just know that I felt like I had to. I had already, like, been talking about, like, how I felt, so I figured why not just let it all out on the table. And it's like, it feels, I don't know if it was intentional, but again, looking back, it feels like it just kind of fed into my insecurity, and then I just started feeling like shit, that started feeling worse, and eventually I cracked, and that's why I ended up leaving and told Mint to come back, which, again, really didn't make that much better. Originally, this was supposed to be something like everything I did wrong, but because throughout the rant I had kind of been sprinkling in, like, moments of acknowledgement where I had been a bit of an asshole, or just fucking this is going to be kind of a mix of that, because, like, I admittedly was not the greatest friend to Mint, especially when she joined. Like, I would sometimes get a bit hostile, and I did explain during that whole rant with Soup that it was because of how, she just kind of encouraged the same behavior that made her uncomfortable, especially when it was directed at her, and that confused me, and then I started acting a bit more irrational. And I did come from, at least initially, a good place, because I didn't want her to be uncomfortable, but I think I did take it too far with how I handled it, because I would even end up DMing her trying to tell her to pull back or just not say anything, and I do have to acknowledge that I was an asshole, and I was out of line for that. It was a situation where, like, my intention of being protective started to bleed into possessiveness, and I feel kind of bad about it. That there's nothing else I can say. I don't have the words. I'm not really very eloquent right now. There were also times when I was just abrasive for no reason. I was extremely easy to overwhelm in VC. Like, Mint aside, there were moments where I definitely hit like a social limit, and I would start to be a bit more of a prick, and I do want to apologize to the people who had to put up with me acting like that at the time. Like, I'm sure none of them care or have already moved on, but I do still feel the need to apologize for that. Then there was another time, this time with Mint again. I don't remember how it started, but the topic of jokes in the server came up, and at one point she ended up saying, "I'm not one of Sue's whores," which, ignoring the implications and obvious potential insults in there, during an argument that we had later on, I did end up throwing that phrase back at her, so that's not my proudest moment. But at the same time, I wasn't entirely wrong. 'Cause, like, after I left, every once in a while, Mint would end up telling me something about the server, and sometimes it was just, oh, same old, things are chaotic, and then sometimes it would just be her directly complaining about somebody because they either annoyed her, they made her uncomfortable, or she would end up telling me about how things lost control of the server. Like, she told me about how Mint would go to her because of issues with the server, and it would piss me off, not because she was reaching out to Mint, but because of all the problems that Sue would complain to Mint about was shit that I called out. It was all shit that I saw coming and could have easily been avoided, but it just kept happening. Like, I thought if I had left, not only would I be able to get myself under control, but I also wouldn't really have to put up with anything like that. But no, Mint is still being annoyed, and I'm annoyed on second hand because all the shit that goes wrong was shit that could have been avoided and shit that I already pointed out. So not only was the same shit still going on, and the only reason I was ever told differently was in a different DM privately where they said, oh yeah, no, things have settled down in the server, which took a damn good while before I ever heard about that. But Mint was not exactly enjoying her stay there anyway, and the only reason she stuck around so long, up until December I think, was for the art. And that sounds like it's me, like, assuming, but, like, that wouldn't be made more clear than much later, and unfortunately, much later is also where I have to look back at all of my self-reflection about how much I was an asshole, how guilty I felt, how there was at least some merit to the things that Sue was saying and what she was calling me out for, and fucking throw that out the window. I think the worst part about this rant is that while I can at least try to elaborate on some of the more major things where it's very clear that I was very much also a problem, I can't really do much in the sense of pointing out things that were exclusive to Sue and why certain behaviors eventually led me to distrusting her and just having disdain for her, like why I've eventually built up this negative impression of her. The last time me and Sue spoke was in December last year, and me and Mint were kind of in a complicated spot. Mint kind of made an alt account just to talk to me and a couple of other really old friends on. There was another account that I wasn't entirely sure on, and that will be relevant to here, and I will try to explain my perspective. So randomly, Maurice, in case you remember that name from much earlier, ended up messaging me and asking me about this new account that showed up on the server, saying that they spoke very similarly and eerily to Mint. And when he asked around, he wasn't really given an answer. They just kind of brushed it off and kind of just gave him non-answers. So he came to me because I was a friend of Mint and really the only other person that could be asked about it. I assumed it was Mint. I asked Mint about it. Mint insisted that it was a shared account or something, and that she wasn't even on it. So after a very lengthy discussion with Mint, I could only leave it at that. And then Sue messaged me. For a little bit of extra context, I think I brought up that at one point Sue got upset with me for not talking to her for 2 weeks. I actually wanted to ask her about that a lot sooner, but I couldn't because she had unfriended me on Discord, and due to her privacy settings, I could not message her. And because you get the same error message and, you know, the same little yellow exclamation of this person's page could not be loaded for a page that's private, as well as in someone has you blocked, I just kind of assumed that she blocked me, which kind of, like, from my perspective, really funny. And funny, I mean ironic, because how are you gonna get mad at me for not talking to you and then remove the one way for me to, you know, talk to you? But again, it's not like we were on good terms at the time. I just found that, you know, specific order of events really funny in a very ironic way. But at some point, she refriended me, and I asked, hey, what do I owe this to? What do I owe your reappearance to? And she said, I'll get to you in a minute. And she, like, right out the gate already sounded pissed off. But then, you know, wanted to play it nice, I guess. She asked, how have you been? Good life. And I said, and I was honest, kind of just existing, not really a good life, and not really having that much fun at the moment. And I asked her how she'd been, if it hadn't been too long to ask this time, because, again, she got upset with me about that. And then, she makes a jab at me, talking without really saying anything, which she wants to talk about nuance, and the entire start of this is just her beating around the bush. She asked, hey, have you been up to lately? Did you do anything? Talked to anyone? Again, she knows what she wants to ask me. I had no idea at this point. So I just continue the conversation. Do I not address what you just said, or what do I say here? And I guess nothing much. I haven't done anything. Just run-of-the-mill stuff. And I just said, college work, the usual, I suppose. Same with talking to anyone, just the usual. And sometimes someone checks in. She asks, happy, content, no speed bumps. And I said, the road is so bumpy, it could be used as a forward off-road testing strip. But I'm here, so that counts for something. She asks, yep, you're persistent, like a cockroach. And again, very passive-aggressive, and I still have no idea what she wants from me here, but I keep the conversation going. And I said, yeah, that's one way of putting it, for better or worse. And then I just straight up ask, hey, should I ask what you mean by that, or is it better if I don't know? And she's just like, oh, we both know I've called you worse things, and you haven't batted an eye. Once you've hit manipulative sack of shit, what else is there, right? Which, coming from her, at this moment, very fucking ironic. And I said, depending on the context, I don't bat an eye because, one, it's ironic, or two, you're being a hypocrite, or two, I'm too annoyed to really care. I want to go to sleep, so if there's anything you wanted to say, or you just want to ask about my day and then kick me while I'm down, I'll save everything else for later. And she asked, oh, you're down? I didn't realize. It's funny how you never said shit to my face. And I said, it still hurts a bit that I can't tell if you're being sarcastic. And haven't I told you plenty to your face? And then she says, I know, you're special like that. Because, mind you, based on the timing, she was responding to me saying, it still hurts that I can't tell if that's sarcasm. And she said, you're special like that. So, if it wasn't already clear by the fact that it's really hard for me to put my thoughts together, I am on the spectrum. I have high-functioning autism. And she knows this. It's not something that I hid, because I was extremely open, for a good while. And one of the complications that comes with, being on the spectrum is that, depending on who you are, it's going to be hard to pick up on social cues. It's going to be hard to, articulate certain thoughts and feelings. And the fact that she dead face just says that, and then when I get pissed off, she responds with "attaboy." She knew what she was saying. She said that with the intent to be demeaning. That was meant to be an insult based around that. And she asked, getting peeved, are we? Finally the boy has something to say. Again, fucking demeaning me. talking down to me. She has, "What bugs you, little one?" I said, "Don't patronize me." And what do you expect me to say? Because again, I don't know what she wants from me. So to me, she is acting like a cunt for no reason. And she says, "What you already said, we want to hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were." And I said what? She said, "You know, this stick would have worked about 2 months ago, and I'm still lost." And she said, "This innocent, doughy-eyed boy act knows nothing. Tell me, little cut-cratch." And I just go, "Doughy-eyed boy? Lady, what the hell are you on about?" And she asks, "Why is it so hard to get rid of you?" Again, on and on. She says, "Please continue playing dumb," and I still don't know what she wants. And all I can say is, "Why do you only message me to accuse me of shit?" And she says, "I'm not accusing. I'm just saying that if there are things you are unhappy with, you should air them out to your face." And I said, "It's wild how you can be so demanding when you had to relay it through Maurice." And when she brought up talking to her face, I was like, like you so generously extended an invitation to chat via, not a DM, but a mutual friend made temporary errand boy. She said it was his choice, and that he needs to stop and ask questions before he acts, but that's neither here nor there, is it? Which I would like to point out, he did ask, you gave him a non-answer, which is why he came to me anyway. That's on you. That's not his fault. And I just respond with, "To be fair, it's not like you have a history of saying things to my face unless it inconveniences you first." And she says, "You're clearly not good at this dance, so let's get to it. Maurice came by and told you about our newest member." And I said, "Okay." She says, 30 minutes later, our newest member vanished into thin air. And I said, "So you did come to accuse me?" And she said, "Now we've done this dance before. And illuminate me, please. Am I missing something?" And I said, "If drunken flailing counts as dancing, then sure. And as for missing something, beats me. Last I told him was to drop it, and then he just kept going." I just went, She said, "And that's it? No clue why she just suddenly poofed out of existence?" And I said, "Is there a reason you care about a random newbie?" Because I still wanted to trust that whoever it wasn't Mint, despite it being brought to my attention. I had my doubts, but I like to trust my friend. At least I still wanted to, despite the fact that I really don't have a reason to at this point. And she just goes, "Cute. Very cute. You know what? I'll bite, just because I'm curious where you're taking this and for how long. Random newbie." Marie said something like, "Hey, this reminds me of someone else." And I said, "Uh-huh." And you said, "Drop it." And I just go, "You want me to mail you a letter with screenshots and with a kiss and a post stamp for proof? I want to go to sleep. Skip the foreplay and get to the point." She says, "I'm just curious why when someone mentions a random newbie, you'd say drop it as if you don't want to talk about it." And because I don't purposefully. Yeah, why wouldn't it be on purpose? Like, it bothers you. And I said, "Most conversations require the intent to initiate." And she asked, "A random newbie is bothering you?" And I said, "We got Detective Gumshoe over here," because at this point I don't know what to say. She says, "Maybe I'm being too subtle for you." And I said, "I mean, when you go on a small tangent about how it's most definitely someone else, it kind of bugs you a bit." Because yeah, by this point, she's doing all of this, and the random newbie left shortly after I had asked Mint about it. It wasn't until this conversation that I realized that Mint was on the alt account, and I wouldn't have found out if Sue just wasn't a raging bitch about it. And she would elaborate on this, later, but I didn't know at the time. She never said anything at the time, so a lot of shit just kind of got dumped onto my lap, and I kind of had to just work with what I had just learned. She says nuance was never your thing. Again, her idea of nuance is just making passive-aggressive and quote-unquote subtle jabs and just insulting you, and if you don't understand why she's upset, then she just gets even more upset. She acts like a cunt and calls it nuance, and that pisses me off. And then she asks, was it someone else? And I said, it wasn't confirmed directly to me, so fuck if I know. And she says, we're timing. Talked to her in the last hour? And then I obviously mentioned her nuance. I brought up that it's just her being passive aggressive with neither nuance or courtesy, so it's not your strong either. I said, if you have something to say, just say it. I want to go to bed. Sue asked, I asked you if you talked to her the last couple hours, and I just said, I got an automated message, said I wasn't expecting an automated message, and then I got unfriended. Big whoop, I guess. And she said, must have had a reason. Here's what I don't get. Why would she vanish? And I said, you're asking me, of all people. Yeah, you. Whether I like it or not, you still affect her. And again, this part here, that just solidified that whoever this person was Mint. So yeah, it was just Mint trying to get back into the server on an alt account. I didn't know until it was confirmed essentially by this conversation, because why else would Sue end up being so pissed off about some random fuck? So I didn't know. No one was honest to me about it. No one was direct with Maurice about it. What was I supposed to do? You call me a cockroach because I'm constantly popping up, yet I end up the bad guy for calling you a leech. And then the conversation just kind of kept going, and then Sue's just like, oh, so you didn't say anything, but somehow she dropped everything, left the server at the exact same time Maurice told you about it. When Sue brought up her, I said there's only one her that fits what we're just talking about, but we're talking about another person, so I'm gonna go with my gut assumption. And Sue just goes, I'm going to ignore your attempt at ignorant. It's frankly insultingly pathetic. What's insultingly pathetic is the fact that you're assuming a bunch of shit and I'm just trying to put up with you. Like this shit right here, this lack of direct conversation, just dancing around the problem instead of just being honest with what you want. It's why it's very stressful to talk to you. And by this point, it had been very stressful to talk to you in general, both in and out of the server. So when you said you didn't enjoy talking to me, I took that at face value and just didn't talk to you. There's no reason to talk to you. I get uncomfortable talking to you. When she brought up the ignorance, I just said, so is your mere presence and the reason behind it, but I'm not going out of my way to insult you for being pathetic, which, to be fair, we've been dropping insults on each other throughout this entire conversation. So yeah, clearly I have been insulting her. Hell, when a way to contact you finally opened up, I hoped to get some answers, and she said Twitter existed. And yeah, it's not like I was going to reach out on Twitter, especially since I didn't know if I still could, because again, she unfriended me on Discord. I assumed that Twitter would have been cut off too. There was no reason to not think so. She said, could have joined the server at any time, and I said, clearly I wasn't welcome from my perspective, and I did promise you to let you personally invite me, and while Twitter DMs are a thing, from my end, you cut contact with me willingly, so I left it at that. Kinda just went, well, it is what it is, just wish it was a bit more honest. I never would have guessed it was a bug, and I didn't have a reason to believe it was, given your recent attitude towards me. She said, maybe you said something. It was just a coincidence that she dropped everything after not even knowing Maurice talked to you at the exact same time, just randomly. And I just said, there's a lot of coincidence there, based on what Maurice told me. And she said, right, so you're sticking to your idiot child explanation. And at first I thought she was saying that I was explaining something like an idiot child, and then she corrected me and said that I'm treating her like an idiot child, which I can't even really deny that, because yeah, you did have a habit of acting like an idiot child, and I kind of just said that. I said, you do act one at times, and she says, only I don't bitch when you demean me, which, false, but neither here nor there, I suppose. If anything, she bitches when I don't demean her, which is arguably worse. Then Sue randomly brought up her Twitter banner just because it was something that Mint happened to have made, and I just said, why do you ask? It's fine, but how is it relevant? And it's clear that she's just fishing for something to be pissed off at me about. Like, she wants me to be upset that Mint is involved in some way, shape, or form. So eventually the conversation just kind of goes off the rail, and at one point it's just like, oh right, you don't play games meant for kids because I made an Ace Attorney reference, and she said it's too late to play them now and not when it mattered most, childhood, but your reading comprehension is as sharp as ever. And I like, on a random side tangent, I feel that that's just a weirdly close-minded statement. And I I kind of referenced that because when she brought that up, I just said, I'm starting to see why my mindset is so cynical and miserable nowadays. Because, yeah, I'd been spending a lot of time with her. This is the kind of thing that I heard constantly. And by this point, my sense of self and just overall mental state had just been slowly deteriorating. It was something that Mint even brought up at some point, that back when me and Mint met, she was a lot more cynical and whatnot, and I was extremely optimistic. And over the years, it's kind of flipped around where she is really optimistic, and like she pointed out that like as a reason that she's stuck in the server despite having to put up with Sue and the amount of stress that Sue puts me under. When I made a comparison to where, hey, what if I was like hanging out with someone who had hurt you tremendously, and I made a very direct response, she said that I would roll with it because it would be easier for us to hang out. Like, that is the kind of like, she is very sweet, and I think it says a lot that she tries to look on the bright side where she can, at least at during that time, because that was the kind of optimism that I had. Sue's still trying to get me to complain about Mint or something. She says, oh, the MS Paint doodle is pretty rad too, and I said, sure, strange time to fish for compliments when you have an entire server for that, which, funny thing, I did rant a little bit more cohesively because now I'm not reading everything back, so I wasn't as emotionally strained, but I did rant about this to someone else. And when I explained some of Sue's behaviors and how she reacted to certain things, she just straight up said, that shit sounds like a cult. So it's kind of funny how I said it first and then someone else said it unprompted. She says I have newfound respect for that. Some might take offense to that. And Sue just goes, that's probably why everyone keeps asking about you constantly. That was sarcasm, just helping you out between the cesspool and fandom sims. And it's just, despite the conversation, I don't see why she had to point out other people. Because, like, I don't assume that anyone would be talking about me anyway. That's just not how I roll. If they've moved on, they've moved on. If they want to reach out, they can reach out. So this feels like it was supposed to be some kind of personal jab. I don't know if it was at my ego or insecurity, but it was clear that it wasn't just to outline whether or not I was an asshole. It was just meant to hurt me. That's how it feels reading this back. And I responded to the cesspool and fandom thing and just goes, yeah, at least the mess seems to have simmered down because, yeah, by this point, I had, someone DM me from the server and it was just like, hey, things have simmered down. Things are, still chaotic, but much less chaotic than it was before. She said the mess that you participated in and enabled, or as the server as a whole, and I said I'll admit both. Though you can't point it out as if you aren't the headmaster of heresy yourself, because, despite everything, and despite me, also enabling a lot of the behaviors, she still refuses to acknowledge that she's the head. Like, she's the reason we're all there. She owns the server. She set the rules. She set the standard. And then, again, we'll get upset when that eventually backfires. Sue mentioned drawing more self-cessed or something, and I just made a joke saying, hey, you are pretty full of yourself, so no surprise. And she said, you knew this going in, you just decided to get on the highest horse you could find. And again, she's also getting on a high horse. It's not really much of an argument, and I'm not even getting on a high horse. I'm just trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Like, I wanted to back out because I recognized things were going too far. It's not like I'm suddenly absolving of myself. She says just because I don't have tact with you anymore doesn't mean I don't have tact, and that I was getting basic courtesy. This is basic courtesy, the same one I would give anyone who bullshit me, which, it's not exactly how courtesy works, and even then, I feel like that says a bit more about your character than anything else. And I just responded with, I'm returning the same courtesy for an egotistical leech who won't let me go to bed. And she said, right, I forgot you were the knight in shining armor in the story, not a manipulative, scared little boy. And I said, scared of what? And do elaborate on how I'm being manipulative, because this whole time you've just been beating around the bush. And she said losing control over his favorite toy. And I said, this whole month has just been contradictions from you, and somehow I'm the manipulative one. Funny how only one of us refers to the other person as a toy, because, yeah, Sue has called Mint a toy before. And she says, it's how you treated her. You think I'm the only one who saw it. And again, I acknowledge that I mishandled a lot of situations regarding Mint, but she never acknowledges where she fucked up. Not unless it's too late, or enough people complain about it. And I point out that it's even funnier when you're here confronting me because of something you lost because you refuse to let it go. Because again, she just can't stand the idea that Mint is not in the server during this time. The same person who begged me to let someone back in for her, which again, doesn't feel like it's the case anymore. So I just said, keep telling yourself that, and I will ask again, is there anything you want to say, or can I go to sleep? It's sad that you see the world through your lens only. Again, funny statement now, because despite reading through all of this, I'm still thinking and reflecting on where I went wrong. Oh boy, that whole self-reflection comment, I'm gonna have to elaborate on later. I said, I don't see it just through my lens, but whatever builds your straw man. I feel like I could talk to you about this, but you're resorting it to a no you, which, didn't you start insulting me? And there's a lot of reasons why I'm not exactly thrilled to talk to you, much less about this, so why are you here? Genuinely, and what do you hope to gain? She said, I was pissed, honestly. That's how it started. And I said, because even if I magically had something to do with it, if I just bullshitted and said, yeah, it was me, directly told her to leave, what would change? Because, yeah, she's antagonized me since the start. If I just lied and said that I knew it was her from the start, or that I told her to leave, it wouldn't change her behavior. She would still be beating around the bush, or maybe she wouldn't beat around the bush as much, but she'd still be acting like this. And Sue says that I have a problem with everyone. I said, also untrue, and I never said I had a problem with everyone. And she said, do I need to bring out the massive wall of text you sent me? Mirror people pleaser. And I said, it's bad to bring that up. Why? She may have been that way with you, but that's not who she is, not really. And I said, it's funny how you talk to me about seeing the world through my lens when you assume yours is the correct one. She said, if you only paid attention to her and not whatever image you had in your head, you would have seen that. But this is neither here nor there. Except, it is here or there, because you brought it up. And again, who are you to tell me what I do or don't know? I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about Mint. That's going to be impossible, and there are going to be things that are going to be kept secret and kept personal. But you really think that you're so good at reading people, or that you were so good at understanding things, when you honestly, based on what I know now, you barely understand yourself, that you think I wouldn't know her, at least somewhat, after 4 years? You think you know her better after knowing her for a couple of months? When Mint herself said that she started talking to you less and less. And that wasn't even from my input. She just didn't want to talk. And again, I pointed out that she's talking to me about not looking through anyone else's lens, but I brought up to her that, hey, it's funny that you're talking about that, but you assume that your perspective is the correct one. And she says, no you, but eloquent. And this is something she does. She wants to call me out for deflecting, but all she ever does is deflect. She tries to say that any attempt to point out her own wrongdoing, or like, if, hey, I did this, but so did you. It's a bit hypocritical, isn't it? But she ends up dumbing it down to just a no you or a whataboutism, when it's not that simple. For someone who wants to talk about nuance, you're not capable of holding a nuanced discussion. This, I'm probably gonna rant about this more later on, but even here, rereading through this, I'm still doing some kind of self-reflection, which you just seem incapable of doing, because the moment something is brought up against you, you just deflect by claiming I'm deflecting. She said, the matter of fact is Mint has been murdered for a reason, and I asked what the reason was, and she said for you to piece together, or maybe that's the reason. Who knows? You're right, we're extremely alike, but there's also places where we diverge, and oh boy. that would not ring truer. She says I'm not going to pry, and I said, you've pried plenty already. I wouldn't take offense, but I appreciate it. And she said, it's your thing, don't want to weasel my way into your life, which, again, ironic. Already have, just wish it was still as a good friend. The choices that we make follow us, some good, others temporarily. Seeing how you talk about people and treat your friend, I cannot in good conscience call you a friend, because besides, I'm a pretty shit friend myself, and besides calling me an asshole, this is the one thing that I do not have a single doubt with what she said. Because yeah, you were a very shit friend. Not just to me, not just with how you handled situations regarding mints, and even, you know, your actual friends within the server sometimes, or your community. You were just a shit person. And I said, a bit, yeah. Kinda had the audacity to get mad at me for going radio silent for 2 weeks when you made it clear you didn't enjoy talking to me. And she said, again, everyone else's fault. Which, no, it's not everyone else's fault. It's just you. Why would I reach out to someone who hates me? You're so focused on my own wrongdoings that you never stop to acknowledge your own, and when you do, you don't change that much. The perception I got over time of you as a person, how you handle certain boundaries, how you handle other people's interests and opinions at times, you can be really unpleasant but always make the other person seem worse. Talking bad about the server isn't as simple as I hate everyone there. My initial issues was just how it was handled. I didn't, and I still don't have any ill will towards the majority of the people in there. Hell, it's great when old friends from the server actually come by into my DMs to check up on me. I don't actively hate anybody. I can't even bring myself to hate you, which has changed over time. You can be a good friend to the majority of the people in there because, frankly, they have a lot in common with you. Usually the good parts, like interests and whatnot. She said, calling people simps or degrading the one place we put blood, sweat, and tears to build together a cesspool or a mess contradicts you. Which, yeah, it was a mess at times. Like, did she suddenly apologize for nothing? Did I not have to apologize to her personally? I also have said, but over time, the same issues kept getting brought up, and it leaves me wondering if being a good friend always means you're a good person. Going from someone I could confide in to someone who'd see me reach out a hand in need and give me a high five instead. And she said, I took your hand up until the moment you invited her and started slapping my hand away, which could also easily just be said about you, but you don't want to talk about that. And if I were to bring it up in this moment, she would just say, no you, what aboutism? Or that I was a hypocrite despite me being the one calling out the hypocrisy. Like, there's just no reasoning with her. There's no rationalizing her. And that's why a bunch of shit sits wrong with me, because I have to question how much of it is my fault and how much of it is just Sue as a whole, because I know I did stuff wrong, but I also can't pretend that Sue did everything right, or that she was innocent, or that she's changed, at least by this point. I said, just because it was fun doesn't mean there weren't issues. When Sue asked, you think her and I stabbed you in the back, I said, she spent hours trying to cheer me up because her, the one person who joined because she said she'd have my back, leaned into and started making jokes at my expense. Not in the funny, I'm in on the joke thing, but genuinely making me uncomfortable. I'm guessing you forgot, or maybe it's just a footnote, but yeah, I can't help but feel a little hurt by that, and things just bounce back, and even harder than the first time, and it didn't have time to set. Despite that, again, Sue just immediately jumped back into her interactions with Mint and whatnot. There was no time to adjust. Mint didn't have time to adjust, and it might not seem like she needed it, because she's much better at handling these kind of things. But again, eventually she would also just get tired of the shit. When I brought up that first time, she said, we don't need a recap, we've been through this. And I said, I was gonna go in a different direction, but I can't not be in the wrong, which wasn't meant to sound self-pitying. It was supposed to be more so how she, no matter what I try to point out, even if I acknowledge my own wrongdoings and I bring up something that she did wrong, it doesn't fucking matter. She will always just pin it back to me. And she said, I never enjoyed your woe is me bullshit. You know that? I've been a manipulative cunt for a fair bit of my life. I know the signs, the tells. And I do not think there was a worse thing she could have said at this point. Because now I have to wonder if throughout this entire conversation, hell, throughout our entire quote-unquote friendship, has have I been manipulated? Had she manipulated me? Is that why I was so willing to cave in to some of her shit? Like, how are you going to try and call me out for being manipulative, and then also point out that you can be manipulative and that you have been a manipulative cunt? All that made me think is that you're being a manipulative cunt right now. And and the conversation kept going. I said, you literally said it's everyone else's fault as a sarcastic response to me. What's with your constant bullshit need to always have something rude to say when all I'm doing is pointing out something that you set up? And she says, I know what you're doing better than you probably do. And again, you're not helping me think that you're being rational. I'm not exactly being the most rational either, but now I have to question fucking everything, cause now it's a possibility that you're just being manipulative. And I just said, you lost me. You lost me from the start, but now I'm trying to see it from how you interpreted it, and I'm still lost. Cause yeah, trying to look at it from another perspective, I still don't fucking understand where she was coming from. And she said, I know you are. Or you act lost, doesn't matter either way. And I said, I don't benefit from pretending I don't know what's up, so yeah, I just am. And she said, let's just chalk it up to I'm a manipulative cunt who weaseled her way into your life and ruined it or something. And I said, no arguments there. I just want to go to bed. And honestly, in hindsight, that is probably the most direct and possibly true statement that she could have made. She says that she doesn't understand what she expected out of this, and neither did I. And I tried to ask earlier and was never given a direct answer. But hey, you don't have to pretend to like me anymore. And then she says, oh right, I wanted to tear you a new one when one of your hissy fits made her pull back again. Which, again, she started talking less and less on her own even besides that. Because again, it's not like I'm some end-all be-all. My personal thoughts and feelings have been ignored on the regular, and that's fine, because she makes the final call. I just said that I'm staying away from the server, and she says she doesn't really give a damn. Join, don't, it's free country, and I just go, it's your server. Free country or not, boundaries are a thing. And she says, don't insult me by feigning respect, and I just say, I'm not. I'd rather just insult you. I never even confirmed it was out of respect, because believe it or not, if nothing else, I try to be a man of my word. I just genuinely don't know my reason. I also have no clue how to approach the hissy fit thing without starting over from the what, so just good to know. And she just goes, really? Even now? Doesn't ring any bells. We are not starting this again. She says I've held back on most of the things you said to her that made her break down, out of respect for her, and likely because I know them, and same, how I've never brought up anything she said about you. She says because you just spew your shit, I pick up the pieces, which, no, not really. She picks up the pieces, and you just break something else. More sarcastic comments, back and forth, tired of it. At one point she said, I helped her untie the leash you had around her neck, and instead of leash, she originally wrote noose. Not a bad thing, it's meant to be like, you know, powerful phrasing, but like, yeah. She wants to say that she's not trying to be the better person or something like that. She's not trying to be the knight in shining armor, but like, again, based on how she says it, how she goes about it, how she reacts, I can't help but feel like it's something relating to ego. I just say, so when you're done being holier than thou, can we just say our goodbyes? She said it wasn't news, auto-corrected her to there, which does not change nothing. She said, but this is your MO, feign ignorance, which I'm not feigning anything. You weren't clear about anything. Evade, which, again, not really. Deflect, something that you have also been doing, and then when presented with evidence or something uncomfortable, get aggressive and then flee. It is almost 2 in the morning. I wanted to sleep 2 hours ago. You came in aggressive. You made me uncomfortable from the start, and it had nothing to do with the main issue. And what do you know? When presented with a counterpoint, you just deflect. Or also get aggressive. She said she never did anything else other than listen and offer her space to be herself, which she would not exactly appreciate. Not a special arrangement, but I guess it's worth rubbing in. And I said, oh hey, the same thing you did every time I tried to ask a question. And I said, also, it's 3 in the fucking morning. I don't want to have this conversation or a conversation to begin with. You came here to bitch and moan while I want to sleep because I have shit to do. She says, you're happy to use your look what she said about you card whenever, which, yeah, I didn't want to say anything to her directly because a small part of me feels bad. Like, I don't like being confrontational. It's not a great feeling. And I wanted to respect both Mint and Sue. Would it have been better to just tell her? Probably, but it's also not like it would have mattered. Besides, it's not like she elaborated on anything either, so both of us are just kind of throwing shit out there for nothing. I just said that you always twist everything into the worst possible perspective. I said, you're a mild inconvenience at best. Don't worry, she's probably got and likely said much more good, which... No, she did not. We will get to that. She says, I aim to please. Can't be that bad. And I said, bad enough to be compared to me, but not enough to be brought up anything unique. She said, ouch. I think being compared to you is pretty nasty already. But hell, I love her spunk, which she definitely does have it, but no. I don't think you understand what was being said. So I just respond with, imagine how I felt being compared to you, but yeah, it's neat. And she said, I'm glad to see her you see her autonomy and not whatever voodoo you thought I did to her, which, yeah, I always saw her autonomy. That's why I ranted about everything earlier. It's why I brought out that whole wall of text. And when I brought up, imagine how I felt being compared to you, she said, all good things, I assume, and I said, I have to preface this since you think so lowly of me already by saying I'm not joking, but no, not even once. Yeah, literally not a single time her name has been brought up in private between me and Mint has she said anything nice about Sue. Never like anything elaborate, but not anything positive either. Like the first time she brought up Sue's name privately was because I did something that annoyed her. She hated it and said, you remind me of Sue. That was the first time. Then Sue says also, she told me to tell you, quote, she doesn't hate you, but... And I said, I've heard it from her personally already, not sure why she told you to tell me though, and she said, no, I meant right now, I told her we were having a nice chat. And I said, again, she's probably already told me that personally, and she said, and that's all she had to say. And I said, what even prompted that? She said, she's a good person. I said, that's not an answer. Probably wants to make sure of something or other. I don't know, I personally don't agree with her, but that's my opinion. So funnily enough, Mint never said that. Mint never said, I don't hate you. But me and Mint actually ended up started talking again while this was going down, and she just wanted to check in, because originally she was just talking to someone else. I just shot her an apology, and I asked her if she could just finish what she was saying, because Sue said we were having a nice chat, in quotations, and Mint would show me that she did not just simply say she doesn't hate me, but it was just simply tell him that I don't hate him at least. That might seem like a very small thing, but that small change in the sentence has a lot of major implications for the tone and the intent and what it means from the person saying it. Saying she doesn't hate me but means that she was ready to say something else. Like, she doesn't hate you, but so-and-so, or you did this, or something like that. But no, she just wanted to make it clear that she doesn't hate me. Because she probably already knows that I'm aware of the grievances that she has with me. It was meant to just be reassuring. And Sue intentionally twisted that. And when I would bring this up later, she would try to make it seem like it was such a minor thing when it actually has pretty massive implications. I can't even trust you to relay a single sentence from my friend. And I'm supposed to trust you with anything? I'm supposed to think you're a good person when you can't even be honest about this one simple thing, a single sentence. The conversation just kind of slows down. It's kind of a weird, bittersweet thing. Just good trails. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. We have a mutual disdain for each other. And I said that at the time, you found happiness. I hope you get to keep it. I hope mine will reignite someday and everything else I'm looking for will follow after. And she says, as long as she is, that's all that matters. And she said, it will. You're a strapping young lad. And it feels so fucking empty, you know? Like, this entire conversation, this entire argument, the way it started, you started off just aggressive, you belittled me, you intentionally made jabs at my neurodivergence just to piss me off, just so you could get an answer that didn't exist, and then we just close it off like nothing happens, like nothing happened. I told her to focus on her own happiness, and she says, I do. Not tying my happiness to hers. We're all responsible for our happiness. We can just help others achieve theirs. Which, fair. I wouldn't say she entirely succeeded, but I hope everyone else was doing better at least. I said, hey, what's that word you like using? Eloquently put, because it is a good piece of advice. I'm not gonna pretend it's not. Again, she has the seeds to be a decent person, and she's just fucking not. I just say, gotta find amusement in the little things. She says, don't have much in the way of a formal education, but I can still read. I know people with a formal education who can't read, so I say, damn, system failed us. She says, true. Goodbye, Sonic Tales, and I just go, bye, Sue Inca. And that was the last time we actually talked, and it was as much of a disaster as probably the last couple conversations that we spoke about. Me and Mint had been in a rough spot during this particular time, and at some point, only a couple days after the conversation with Sue, me and Mint would get into another argument, and it was rough. I didn't feel heard. I felt like I was being dismissed. I couldn't really begin to believe how she would feel, but I won't go over every little thing for, her own privacy. But what I will say was the end, because this would be the first time we kind of split, and not because of like a scheduling difference or anything like that, but genuinely just went our own separate ways. To shorten it, I just wasn't feeling heard, and she felt bad and asked what she could do because, we were friends and I'd been hurt over the last couple months, whether justified or not. I felt bad, she felt bad, and it eventually culminated in her just saying that she should go, and she started profusely apologizing. She said that she was sorry for ruining my life, for making things the way they were, because, she felt like she had indirectly caused a lot of things, because, that's why I tended to get yelled at, which really shouldn't have fallen on her, and she left it at saying she was better off away, to put it extremely lightly, and she left it at goodbye, and I'm sorry, and I just tried to respond saying that it was okay, and that she had places to be. I appreciate the apology, and I felt bad. I didn't want things to end this way, and I just kind of assumed that we weren't friends anymore, and, as much as it sucked, I respected her decision. A week later, I had started to get worried again. I mean, I'd already been mildly worried, but about a week later, I actually acted on it, just because of that last line about saying she was better not being there. And so I messaged her, just kind of clearing my thoughts, and also just giving her an update on me in case that she was, concerned about me, because sometimes she does worry, but mostly I just wanted an excuse to check on her while also making sure she knew that I frankly was alive. And
You know, I apologized. I explained that I was still kind of I was frustrated with myself for feeling bad because, you know, I don't want to bother her. I just kind of said that it sucked that it ended that way, and it was just nice having her around. She actually got back to me, which I wasn't expecting. It was the same day, and turns out the same day that I came to check on her to make sure she was okay and to just give one final apology just to clear my head, she also was planning on checking in, so that was a funny coincidence. And turns out she had actually been checking daily just to see if I had said anything at all. Again, funny coincidence, and I mean, that did make me feel better. I didn't know how to feel about it because I didn't want to assume the reason behind it, but it still meant a lot to me, and she didn't really have much to say about the things that we had discussed in the past, vented out and all that, and then she just asked if we could VC, said it was okay if I didn't want to, and I just said sure, and we talked. The first, I think, hour or two, maybe, we just were talking, you know, clearing the air. I got a chance to air my thoughts out, and it was just a lot of talking, clarity, and back and forth apologizing to each other. And we kind of just spent the rest of the afternoon just hanging out. After the initial conversation, she just kind of hung out. That was it. I mean, for a little while, it was essentially just her, like, cheering me up, because I mean, it was kind of a tense, you know, moment, but like, we were having a good time, and since then things kind of just moved on. I said I appreciated her time, and that she doesn't have to just, like, she has to be here. Just, if she wants to, I'm here. It was fun hanging out. It ended nicely, but it wouldn't be the first time that we would, like, separate like that. And the second time would be arguably worse, because it was certainly a perception changer. So before this happened, for the last couple months after me and Mint reconnected in December, I haven't been feeling great. Like, after everything that had gone down as a whole, whether it was Sue or Mint or other factors, I had started to gain a very low value of myself and my art, and that kind of put a rut in, you know, trying to draw, because I just didn't like it. I just couldn't bring myself to without feeling ill, just the sheer thought. And it didn't help that certain characters would remind me of something negative that had already happened, and even looking at my own art didn't really, it didn't work out too well. I only got reminded of, you know, a lot of the negative shit that ended up happening. So I couldn't really see past the fact that I only improved during that, and now I can't really shake that off. It was a weird feeling, and that kind of festered over several months, and I just couldn't really bring myself to do much. It took me a long time just to get back into playing certain games that I had bought, just because I couldn't bring myself to enjoy them the same way I used to. Then Valentine's Day came around, like this Valentine's back in February. The exact phrasing of the conversation, because of course I don't, but I do remember we were just hanging out. It was a voice chat, like usual, and there have been, like, once or two more times where the server was brought up since December, and it was usually something that would be brought up, either a quick vent or just a passing comment, and then we just move on. It was nothing ever too serious for too long, which is why it only happened like once or twice, because I was overthinking things at times. But this time was different because it wasn't like a negative comment or anything like that. We were just talking, and at some point I said that I missed some of the people that I had met, and that seemed to have set Mint off. Not in like an angry at them sort of way, but also kind of, but she was frustrated, which surprised me because, like, again, there have been other times that it was brought up in the past, but this was the first time I ever mentioned missing anybody, and she immediately snapped. And I don't remember the exact wording, but I do remember kind of just the basis of what she was saying, and it essentially boiled down to just, hey, you need to move on because everybody sucked. Like, no, like, Sue sucks, even going as far to say that she had been too polite and she'd gone way too easy on Sue. Everybody else sucked. You need to move on because nobody cared about you at any point. You clearly have been affected for one reason or another. You are traumatized whether you like it or not. And I didn't get to respond to that last bit because she knew that I would try to argue against that and said, no, if it's affecting you to the point where you genuinely can't enjoy things in your normal life, then believe it or not, you might be traumatized. Which feels weird, but like, I guess if you want to get into the semantics, sure. But it just feels weird because of what it is that ticks me off. It feels unworthy, but, you know, Mint is very... I don't know how to say it besides just saying that she's really nice and just... She just told me that she did not care how serious or I thought it was, because it's affecting me in this way and I have to accept that. After that, the conversation took a turn, because at some point she asked me what my purpose was, like in general, like with us hanging out, and even just straight up said that I had no use, and admitted that the only reason that we had been hanging out since December was because she thought I was at risk of ending my own life, which I knew that I had lost interest in a lot of things. At least I assumed that was it, but I guess she picked up on something that I didn't pick up on for myself and thought I was genuinely at risk of that. So, on one hand, I feel a little bit vindicated because the only person I feel who could have told me whether I was justified in believing that Sue wasn't exactly a great person confirmed that she wasn't exactly a great person. So yeah, I did some bad shit myself, but at least I knew I wasn't crazy for at least that one thing. But at the same time, immediately after I get hit with the low tier god, didn't exactly put me in a great emotional state, because now I was rethinking every interaction I had towards certain people, because like it's not like I hold anything personal towards anyone. And it's one thing with what Sue had mentioned before, where it was just like, oh yeah, obviously everyone else would have moved on because you were kind of a prick. That's understandable. But when Mint phrased it in that way, that implied nobody ever cared, that's a little different, because that makes me recontextualize everything I thought I knew into believing that I was always just a joke. I just happened to be at the right place in the right time and just went along with whatever happened. I was just there. I was just a joke and nothing more. At least that's what I started to think, at that time. And the conversation moved forward from there. I wasn't exactly feeling great. I just the only other thing I remember was trying to ask her what I did wrong, because I remember she mentioned that she had some grievances with me, and she said that she didn't know. And I said, okay, do you know what Sue did wrong then? Like, do you know why there's an issue there? And she said, yeah. And I try to figure out, okay, then what's wrong with me? And she just goes that she didn't care. It wasn't relevant. It wasn't justified bringing it up because it didn't matter. So, but I still, like, on one hand, that's great, but I still feel bad. And I'm still, like, hung up over the whole nobody cared and the fact that I served no purpose. Like, being called useless by a longtime friend, especially, like, during that whole thing, it was awful. And by the end of it, she moved accounts because during this conversation, she had made an account essentially just to talk to me and a couple other people, but still had another account, and she moved to that one. So the whole nobody cared thing, like, the funny thing about, like, this whole conversation starting is that I just left it as an open term. I just said that I missed a couple of the people I had met. I didn't bring up any names. She did. And some of it ranged from just considering them a bad person to just they're really fucking weird, but nothing beyond that. Like, so that's how I know it was probably a bit more genuine and less targeted or biased, because, like, I didn't specify anybody yet. So if anything, that also just kind of helped for me to assume that, like, wow, it really was just nothing in hindsight. But yeah, back to the present. Things got tense again, because of course they did, and she eventually said that she was going to do some stuff and might be where we stopped talking, and that she was blocking me so that she wouldn't be tempted to come back and talk to me. The conversation closed shortly after, and we stopped talking. And I will say it was a bit miserable for a little bit, because, like, I was getting used to not exactly being in a rush in order to talk to somebody. It's kind of like when you have, like, a hobby or a specific person that you talk to, and all of a sudden, like, you don't have that, like, you don't engage with it. You kind of realize how slow time moves around you. But yeah, that lasted a couple weeks, and I did not plan on reaching out. The last time I messaged was actually the day after, which was to just give her a quick update and make sure that, just so she knew that I was okay, and to hope that she was okay. And that was it. I did not intend to reach out after that. And 2 weeks go by, and I get a text from her. She ended up reaching out to me. I admittedly got a little nervous. I got scared because I was not expecting this. I genuinely just kind of already accepted that it was over. I will say it is funny that the one of the first things she says to me is, "I'm glad you're not dead." Really encapsulates how this long series of events ended up affecting me. But yeah, it's not like I at least I don't think I was ever at that point. Maybe super sad, but I don't know. She unblocked me on Discord, and we got back to talking, but we had a pretty lengthy talk. Just, again, apologies towards each other, and she just kind of let me lay it all out on the table, just right there. And that would make it the second time I did this. I ranted about this. Or no, it would have been the first time I just kind of ranted about this. But I didn't want to bring up anything involving her, because I thought that she had felt bad enough, and she was giving me this chance to vent out my thoughts, so I just kind of vented out what I could remember at that given time, and we just spent the rest of the day hanging out like normal. And from that point, I just kind of let her reach out to me. I don't bother her too much. But yeah, that's kind of where it ended. Or at least it was supposed to end. Just this little moment, and then a follow-up about just a short tangent after the fact that I was gonna go on to close out. And then recently happened. So me and Mint were hanging out like usual. We were playing some online games together because that was something we just kind of got back into. And all of a sudden, while we were playing, I get a message from Sue. And I was surprised because, you know, we haven't spoken in a long while, so I'm a little bit curious and also a little bit worried given our history. And, you know, the last few times we spoke, it was never about anything good. So I asked Mint if, hey, have you spoken to Sue lately? And she said no, and that got me a little bit more worried because now I had no possible idea as to what Sue could be messaging me about, because I don't really have a reason to believe that she would message me for a good reason, like just casually. And since me and Mint were playing, I just decided to ignore it for a good while. I think like an hour or two before I finally opened the message, and I saw it, and it was, you know, it was just a simple hello, and you know, just hi, it's been a while, and I just said, hey, indeed it has, left it at that, and honestly didn't assume I'd hear anything back. And then I got another notification, and even though it was a simple how's life, I did not feel good when I got that second message. I don't know what happened. I just felt a sharp pain in my chest, in my heart. It was uncomfortable. My chest felt like it was tightening. I could barely breathe. I just got out of my chair, stood up, and started pacing around my room, just trying to breathe, hand to my chest, clawing at my shirt, because I just did not want to talk to her. I don't know, panicking, scared. I don't know, but it was an awful feeling, that sharp pain. The only times I've ever felt that pain was emergencies, to put it lightly. So it wasn't exactly fun feeling that nervous, but after I took a little bit to compose myself and breathe, I responded. I just kind of, you know, I just responded with, it's living, it's just kind of it. Same old, and just, I was waiting for, you know, something to go wrong, like some kind of passive aggressive comment, like the last time, where it just started off as a nice conversation and then flew off the rails. But that didn't happen. I admitted that like the past was, you know, kind of bitter sweet and more just kind of like a haunting presence, because, you know, there were certain things that just didn't click right, and so just kept bothering me, and we just had a conversation, like that's it. And I'm I don't know, I was kind of surprised, especially since at one point she said that she kept going back to that one rant I gave her a long time ago, and just said she genuinely tried to understand, and it surprised me. You know? Like, earlier she made a comment assuming that the thing I couldn't move on from was mint, which couldn't have been further from the truth, but hey, it's not like I knew that's what she meant at the time, especially since that was part of it, but not really. But yeah, no, she tried to understand what I was saying, even if she couldn't quite wrap her head around certain things, and I got a chance to even elaborate on some things since I didn't really explain it the best before. And it was just a genuine conversation, and I admitted, hey, I was not expecting this. I kind of expected something a lot angrier, and even explained why. I will say there was still passive aggression, because I one thing I said was like, hey, I'm genuinely surprised because it's been so long. I couldn't help immediately thinking, what did I possibly do now, despite the fact that we'd been out of contact. And she said, there's plenty you've done, and I am aware of that. That wasn't the concern, and I think it would be a little weird to show up months later for that. But I didn't think too much of it. Turns out the original reason she wanted to nag me was just to tease me about a quote-unquote commission. It was never anything serious, but it was just a joke thing. But she did give me money, so I did feel bad about it for a good while. So despite her saying to drop it, joke's on her, about a week before she contacted me, I finished it. Like not finished it, but like I actually did it. I mean, I'm not happy with it, obviously, because again, don't really enjoy it, but I did do it, so there we go. But yeah, she, asked more questions to get more clarification, saying it was hard to get a straight answer from me, which, again, a bit ironic, but again, the fact that we were just having a normal conversation, I didn't think anything of it, and I even got to explain more in depth about the whole it's not her thing, and like finally clarify, hey, it's not just about playing up a character, because some people do, they have different senses of humor, different limits, so on and so forth. I'm oversimplifying what I tried to explain, but yeah, the fact I was getting to clarify certain things that I couldn't have before, and she made an attempt to actually understand and appreciated the honesty, that did a lot. And I was genuinely reconsidering a lot of things that I thought. I thought maybe I was wrong. There was a long period of time where she was just unreasonable and really hard to talk to, and just overall very, very contradicting at times. But like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe she was capable of change. She was capable of self-reflection and the ability to actually take things into account and look back on not just, other people's actions, but her own, try to get a better understanding and see where that can move forward from. Basically, I assume that she did become at least somewhat a better person. Obviously, still having grievances with me, which understandable. I can't blame her for that, but at least she came across as a better person than when we met. No, of course not. No, why? Because that would be too easy. That would have been too great, wouldn't it have been? Ugh, fucking hell. At some point she asked, hey, what is the plan now? And I asked, what did she mean? And I said that I was ready to move on without her in my life, and she was referring to Mint. And I just said, yeah, not that it's come to that. As for the plan, I don't know. I guess I'll just keep existing. And she responded to not that it's come to that with a, so you're not ready yet. And that confused me, because I just said that I would be ready to move on without her, because there was a period of time where I did. I respected her wishes and just didn't contact her. Yeah, it was a little bit sad for the first couple days, but like, I just did my best to just live on, and that was it. I did, side note, I did try to connect with other people. I am so glad that Mint ended up coming back, because literally that same day, one of the new people I had met said some very questionably racial things, so yeah, no, I ain't talking to those people anymore. But yeah, back to the conversation with Sue. She was confused, and she was like, hey, to move on, you're not ready yet. And I just like, do you want me to tell her to go away? And then she got even more confused, because she didn't know that we had still been talking. And I clarified, yeah, we have been talking. And she has, oh, the whole time? I said, yeah, mostly. Things okay? Besides some emotional turmoil, I think so. We hang out. I thought it was just going to end there. Again, I was like, I appreciate that this isn't much of an interrogation, and hey, is there anything else you want to know? She said, no, appreciate it, hope it gets better, and I said, I hope so, it'll likely be a while, but thanks, hope things stay alright, because, again, despite grievances, a small part of me does still want to remain optimistic. She said she was still kind of confused, it's weird, and then she asked me, are you lying to me? And if so, why? And I just said, about what? And she said, about you and her talking and hanging out. I couldn't care less, but I'm confused. And I'm just also confused, because, yeah, what? That would be a weird thing to lie about. But no, I'm not lying. She said, as far as I know, you're blocked everywhere, save for today. It was a coincidence that I'm here. I'm just really confused. And I just said, coincidences are a paranoid's nightmare, I guess. And she says, right, so you're just fucking with me. And I'm just like, no. And she has, it was weird. I'd be like, well, like you said, as far as you knew, I was blocked everywhere. I'd be kind of surprised hearing that we've been hanging out. She said, the only proof of this is your word. Do you really think... And I just said, do you really think I would lie about that just to mess with you? And she said, yes. Well, not for that specifically. So again, you're lying. Again, this assumption, the longer this went on, the more confused I had gotten, and the more it was starting to irritate me. Because despite saying that she did not care, she just could not accept the fact that me and Mint had been hanging out. Like, she seemed really pissed off at the notion. And I just go, what do I realistically gain from lying? If I'm lying for the sake of myself, that only prolongs my own misery, which I've had enough of, so thank you. No, thank you. I couldn't lie just to mess with you because I didn't think you'd even be here. And then Sue said, do me a favor, just stop lying to me. I can't take you at your word, you know this. And I said, I can't really take you at yours either. And funny thing, when Sue said, do me a favor, Mint had already come back. Like when I started this whole conversation, Mint had left. By this point, Mint had already come back, and Mint had asked if Sue had messaged me because Sue had ended up messaging her. And this is where things get a little bit complicated. At the same time Sue said, do me a favor, Mint in VC also told me to do her a favor. And I listened, and she said to essentially just say that I had only been unblocked recently, and that Sue had only been here just to fuck with me, which I said, hey, I already knew that. She came to bother me about the commission, and then she just reiterated, no, she just showed up to mess with you. So that kind of changed the context of this whole conversation on its head. But yeah, I had already said that we'd been hanging out, and now I had to somehow say that we hadn't been, because Mint could tell that I was starting to get a little stressed out, and she didn't want to put up with Sue. So
Sue brought up that she'd never lied to me. I brought up how she couldn't relay even a simple message. Sue said, "You're making it seem like you're buddies. Either you're highly delusional or just think this is the kind of thing that gets to me, and if it didn't, you wouldn't be so pissed off about it." But maybe that's just me misreading things again, because you know me. But I will say, I'm not the delusional one. It's you. It's always been you. But yeah, now I had to somehow... I somehow had to backtrack what I'd already said to try and not make the situation worse, because Mint didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to deal with it. So it just kind of kept going. I just said, it's not delusion. I'm not fucking with you. Me and Mint have known each other for years, so there's a slight chance we'd silently agree to just talk like normal people. And, you know, she sent a screenshot of something I said earlier. She said, apologies, we talked, we hung out. She said, you take one instance and stretch it over months. And I just said, things were on and off for a while before I was blocked for an extensive period of time up until last night. That's when I actually tried to start fully backtracking. She said, it's fine, let's call it a misunderstanding on my part. And I said, or a miswording on mine, which I have a habit of doing. Let's call it there. Also, when I was trying to backtrack, I remember I ended up telling her that I had been blocked sometime in December or January. That was not intentionally meant to be like misinformative or a lie. I genuinely just misremembered because, you know, the second time I was blocked because she didn't want to be tempted into coming back or anything, and so I assumed that the first time I had also been blocked because I completely forgot that I was the one who reached out, and, you know, she was waiting to see if I had said anything, and I obviously couldn't really message her if I was blocked. And I don't think she's the kind of person who would be expecting a message while having the person she wants a message from blocked. So that's on me. I genuinely just forgot, and I didn't mean to unintentionally be misleading, besides the whole, you know, having to backtrack now. She said, so you should move on. Everyone else has, which, again, I don't know what that has to do with anything. She just likes to bring up that everyone else from the server hates me. Which, the only reason I have anything questioning against that is because I reached out to someone and we just had a nice short conversation. He didn't seem like he hated me, or he at least didn't leave me on red. He even asked me if I will save that for later, but I felt bad. I didn't have the heart to tell him. I don't know how he actually feels about me, but it was a nice talk. But, like, I don't know why she keeps bringing that up. And I clarified, hey, Mint reached out to me, not the other way around. If she stops, I stop. I managed just fine. And I'm glad to hear that everyone's moved on. I didn't really expect anyone else to be hung up on me. And she said, what did you expect after what you did? What you treated her, but at this point we're rehearsing everything, which, yeah, we are, so why do you keep bringing it up? And all I could really say in response was, and to this day you are blissfully unaware of your hand in her stress. And then the conversation just kind of dove into me just giving out certain examples, things that she had done, because, yeah, she wanted to be quote-unquote enlightened. I just said, hey, you treated certain people because you were inconvenienced or they didn't agree with you. And she said, this should be good, and enlighten me. Just same as always. And then the thing is, she brought up whataboutism. She was just like, and the way I treated other people is just whataboutism at its finest. Like, no, it's not as simple as a whataboutism. You genuinely can't seem to grasp that you might have done something wrong, or at least you don't acknowledge it unless it's too late. How are you going to keep fucking bothering me about this? Like, you're on my ass about it, but you can't even acknowledge your own shit. Which, again, the way this conversation started, I thought you were better. I thought you were able to just actually look back at certain things and try to get a grasp on it. But no. You're the exact same person. Arguably slightly worse. I brought up how she treated Maurice, and I'll admit, maybe saying that it was a lie was probably a misword, if you wanted to get into the semantics, it would be lying by omission, because again, no one really clarified anything to Maurice, but I'm pretty sure lying by omission is just, it's only recognized in like a court, so that's just me being a smartass for no reason. But it doesn't really change how he was treated or how he was treated after the fact, like when she got mad at him. And I will say, it's kind of funny how this ended up going around, because like Sue wanted him to relay the message of, hey, before you go running off to ST, tell him to go fuck himself. But of course Maurice was way too nice to actually do that, because he's a decent person. Just like I, for some reason, could not bring myself to just tell Sue that whatever was going on, me and Mint talking, was none of her goddamn business. And I think that says a lot coming from me when, you know, I'm paranoid and sometimes overstep a boundary. I should be the one fucking saying this, but I was supposed to. Mint told me to, and I didn't, and I wish I fucking did. And at some point, she wanted more, and I just said, hey, I don't know what you've been up to. I just hoped it was better than before. And she said, right, so that was it. Again, just assuming that's the only thing I had on me, and just dismissing any concerns I had. And I said, I'm working on an assignment, give me a break, which wasn't exactly a lie. Yeah, me and Mint were trying to get back to Marvel Rivals, and even we're still playing, but like between matches, I was working on an assignment. I still wanted to get that done. I didn't want to be doing this between matches. I wanted to work on my goddamn assignment. And she says she wasn't rushing me. I'm just like, assuming that was it, kind of feels like you're rushing me, but I'll take your word for it. And like, she tries to bring up, hey, I took responsibility for the whole RP thing, and I mentioned to you that was a hard thing for me to do. Yeah, I was hurt. Nobody so much as asked if I was okay after it, but let's chalk it up to growing pains. And then she said all the arguments we had in the server were for show, especially over dumb things like video games, and she said I did enable behaviors, like the first week, that's on me. Then again, I wasn't the only one, but that's what aboutism, which, yeah, it is, but like, again, that would just be a deflection, which you've called me out before. So when is it okay to bring up what other people do? Is it only when it's convenient to you? And she just leaves it at, so the things you're accusing me of doing are being a shitty Discord admin and owner and acting like a brat, not quite the same things that you've been doing. Oh boy, that specific sentence pisses me off. But the last thing I said was, hey, you also acted hissy when I tried to explain why I didn't check on you sooner, not to mention acted like you were doing us a favor by taking the fall when all of us was already ready to admit our own faults, which was pretty entitled of you. But to your credit, you were all 3 back then, and seemingly still are. You were all 3. What the fuck? I have no idea. Oh, right, all 3, because she said that she was being a brat or emotional, or unstable, so I just... Yeah, it was clear that neither of us were really holding back. And for the second one, I just said I'd agree if it wasn't to the point where other people could tell if the argument was a joke, including the people taking part in the argument. And I said, and then for the third one, I brought up that you enabled behaviors almost every week. I don't know if you remember, but even after week 1, it had to get out of hand before you took responsibility. Things got marginally better each time, but you can't pretend you weren't still enabling certain jokes or actions for the sake of the bit. The only time I heard it got better was after I lift, which I'm glad to hear for all of you. And you're right, you're not the only one. All of us were, including me. And I guess I'm gonna take this quick moment to say, I feel like me and Sue have been arguing over, like, who enabled who at this point. But in reality, I feel like we missed out on like a bigger picture where it's more of a cycle, you know? Like, we enable a specific behavior, or she enables a specific behavior, and that behavior gets parroted back. Like, it just kind of goes in a circle, you know? Because, like, it's not just us who are doing it, it's also the people who actively engage with it in the server. So eventually that just kind of feeds back into us, and then we keep doing it, and so they keep doing it, and it just keeps going, like a wheel on a bus or whatever. So, yeah, again, I do have to take responsibility, but it's also not as simple as that, because obviously when people continue to do it, then we feel like that's also okay, same way that they do. The only difference is that if I were to stop, everyone else would still keep going because she would. Because all that changes is that I'm no longer part of the equation. She, as the owner, and the literal only reason that most of us even gathered there to begin with, is the only one with the direct power to pull on the brakes. So
Again, not quite the same thing, but whatever helps, I suppose. But yeah, moving back to what I said, I just said I still take accountability for that, which is funny that you bring that up, because when I did start to pull back, you called me a prude. Those little things you did, even if they aren't severe, were things that came up constantly. You weren't just being a shitty admin and a brat, you bordered on being a bad person. I haven't forgotten that special comment either, saying I didn't deserve common courtesy. In what context, regardless of what I did, is that excusable? Despite saying she made you want to be a better person, you never really showed that. But you'd still be right. It's not the same, and I'm glad you acknowledge your own whataboutism. I have an assignment to work on. I want to get it done before I go to sleep. This was certainly a discussion. He said it indeed was. I just said, hey, Mint reached out to me. If she doesn't reach out again, that's fine. Nothing more to it. I appreciate you checking in initially, because I did appreciate that she felt the need to check in. It was, despite the fact that there might still be some tension, I don't know why she reached out, and I won't pretend to know why, but it was nice while the normal conversation lasted. And then, of course, she seemed to hate the fact that I was in contact with fucking Mint, which is not, yay, I appreciate that. That was a spiral that didn't have to happen. Like, why was it an issue? She said it was just a coincidence. I have no reason to lie. Good luck with the assignment and whatever else you have going on. And I just said, neither me. Despite everything, I believe you. Coincidences are like a funny prank that time plays on us. I will certainly need the good luck. Thank you, and good luck to you as well. With everything. And then she left it at, I appreciate it, and I did not respond. Shortly after, she unfriended me on Discord again, which Mint told me to, but like I keep forgetting to, either because I didn't have the heart to, or like I went to sleep and then I forget the next morning because I kind of assume we've already been out of contact. But yeah, she came back, and it doesn't feel like anything changed. Like, my impression of her was so negative. I legitimately saw her name as an insult to my friend's artwork. And then this conversation started, and I thought that I was wrong about her. I genuinely thought I had overassumed, or maybe it was just, you know, petty frustration, something like that. Or maybe, or at the very least, that she changed, that she'd gotten better, and I was wrong that she was incapable of it. And then this happens, and she's pretty much the same as when we fucking stopped talking. She hasn't gotten any better, and that frustrates me. Like, how are you going to say that Mint inspired you to be a better person, yet from the day you two met, you only got worse? You genuinely only got worse, and it's arguable that you bring out the worst in people, but at the very least, that's up to the individual. Like, that's not gonna stop me from admitting my own faults. But Jesus fucking Christ. And, oh, I guess now just to tie everything up in a nice little bow, remember when I, like, long ass time ago, rewind, I brought up, you know, that original rant when I called her, like, attached to Mint to an unhealthy degree. She tried to counter that with drawing, right? I think I brought that up. Backshots or whatever. Well, here's a bit of context for that. I and her ended up in a little race competition because of some, you know, stupid challenge in the server. It was a bit, and we were both drawing something. And again, the worst thing I did was call her a brat. It was essentially just, you know, just another not safe for work drawing to add to the fucking pile. And I would also like to point out that before this, Sue had kind of given us free reign to do whatever the fuck we wanted with her Sona, so it's not like it was, it's not like there was ever an issue with comfort. And in fact, after our falling out, even though there were other drawings planned, it wasn't necessarily out of obsession. She just has a really easy character to draw, and I was struggling to draw at the time, so I thought something easy would be nice. For contrast, there's what she drew, and I mean, come on, it was just a simple little thing. There's no possible way that it could be that bad. Yeah,
I don't really know what to say about this in hindsight. Like, at first, I didn't have a problem with it. Like, it felt weird at first, but I didn't think about it too much, because at the time, I respected her, and I looked up to her as both an artist and as a friend. But then there was... I made a passing joke after she made that, where I said, damn, this is the first time anyone's ever drawn not safe for work of me. And she... I remember she responded with something along the lines of, I mean... you're not really in frame, so it doesn't really count. And that is true, but that response just feels wrong in hindsight, knowing how she is, because that's still my name. The implication is still there. That doesn't suddenly disappear. And the thing is, like, the only reason I had it was because, again, I did not consider it an issue because I didn't think she meant it in a negative way, or at least she didn't mean for it to be that way. It was just meant to be some, kinky shit or whatever. And I wanted to learn from the anatomy, so hey, benefit of the doubt plus, learning art or whatever. But as time went on, I look back at that and it's just, what the fuck? And it doesn't help that, like, when it was brought up, initially it was posted in the server, then it got deleted. Then the next time it got brought up, because a lot of people remembered it and knew people had joined the server and were asked, who caught wind of it, wanted to know what they were talking about, and Sue immediately shut that shit down. And we ended up having a messaging privately about it, and I said, yeah, no, I understand you wouldn't want to bring that up again, because it did seem kind of rapey. And then she said, glad you understand, and then we moved on. And then the third time we brought it up, it was more casual again, just kind of making light of it, because yeah, I never ended up deleting it. I mean, I think I deleted it from my computer, but yeah, not from the thing I have for references. I can't help but just go back to what I was initially thinking and saying about the fact that she does not care unless it could backfire on her, unless it starts to make her look bad, or it could make her look bad, or it starts to inconvenience her. And the most frustrating thing about it, she was 35. She was 36 as of this February, if I recall. She's older than the majority of us. Age doesn't have anything to do with maturity, and I'm not saying at a certain age you can't make these kinds of jokes or anything like that, or you can't make jokes or be, silly or whatever. But you should also recognize, like, you are, like, the figurehead of your community, but you just don't. It takes way too much for you to finally get a grasp. And the worst part is, had I gotten some kind of notice beforehand, like, I was aware and I was able to give permission, like, just gave me a heads up, like, oh, hey, the thing I'm gonna do is some, kind of freak kinky shit, it would at least be just me feeling slightly regretful at best, even that. But I had no idea this was the thing, nor would I have expected it. And again, just like with what I brought up earlier with the other drawing, it's just kind of another example of just jumping the gun. Just kind of, I don't know, intentionally or unknowingly, or just not caring about whether or not she crosses a line, unless it makes her look bad. You don't deserve your community. I really don't think that you do. You're entitled, you're negligent, you're ignorant. There's only so much I can give the benefit of the doubt to. I can't ignore the things that I've done, but I can't ignore the pattern, You're right. Not a single thing that you have done is worse than some of the things that I've done. But it's that consistency, it's that pattern. That's the problem, because it shows that you don't grow. It shows that you don't change.
you can only chalk it up to growing pains to a certain point before you start to recognize you're making the same mistake over and over and over again. And then there's how you actually handle certain things. Like I've mentioned before, there's only so many times that you can say that before it stops being a joke and just starts being who you are. You're the kind of person that someone could meet at a bar and have a couple drinks with and just talk as if they were a friend. You know? And just have a good time. You're a fun person, but you're not a very good person. And you've only gotten worse. You're spoiled. And your community spoils you. And the thing is, I know you can be a better person. I've seen the seeds of it. You can be a good person. You have been a good person. Or at the very least, you've been a good friend. I've seen how you treat people, how you've been there for people in your server, in your community, not just as fans, but as friends. It is possible in theory. You just can't manage it. At least not anywhere past the surface level. When I first met you, when I first knew you, like at the start of everything, you were quick to take accountability and to take responsibility and like work to make things, you know, a little bit better or more comfortable. But again, you only got worse. You just started being more dismissive, and that's why this most recent conversation still nags at me, because you acknowledge that it might have come across that way, but you were considering it, but it clearly still missing like the fundamental issue at hand. And then I think back to when you said that you've literally like where you said you bled for me and you're willing to throw it all away for me because you thought you hurt me, which, oh boy, little did you know at the time how badly you would end up hurting me. But it's funny, because you know who did actually bleed for me? Mint! And the last time your name was brought up between the two of us before you showed up that day was we were talking about VTubers and experience with them. And I said, yeah, I've met a couple. I know one that likes rocks. She's pretty damn cool. And hers was not as positive, and her only description for the person she met was, she's worse than Sue. You are a baseline for what could be considered an irresponsible or a bad person, or an unfavorable one. That is the lasting impression you've made. And I know that there's, like, based on what you've said, that, you know, everyone else doesn't have a good impression of me. And then there's Mint, who recently said that if I were to just disappear and focus on myself, just go offline, that she'd still be here waiting for me, which, in all fairness, I've essentially been offline already. I just kind of disappeared, but that aside, the fact that she's willing to just be here for me, or that she's still open to talk, that says something. Like I like, if I were anybody else, I would be long gone right now. Like, no contact. I would have been blocked for good or something. But I had to have done something right. There is something that she sees in me where I am worth keeping around. I am good enough to keep around. So you kind of have to ask yourself, where did you go wrong? I never considered what you said about where you and Mint diverge to be so, I guess, clear. But yeah, there are a lot of similarities, but in hindsight, a lot of them
were completely superficial, because at your core, you are very much very different. When shit hits the fan and things have to get serious, you act like a petulant child. Mint actually tries to handle the situation. Everyone gets emotional. That's fine. I'm an emotional person. But that's only going to be an excuse for so long. Not to mention constantly bordering on being egotistical or narcissistic. This part's going to be added in post due to more recent events, but like, I don't see you being able to change. There's only so much I can believe in before I genuinely can't see it getting any better. I heard you were on hiatus. That's good to take some time for yourself. But honestly, I think you should just stay gone. Make it permanent. You don't deserve anything that you have. I genuinely think that in the long term, everyone is better off without you. Everyone you know, everyone you might not. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You weren't just a bad admin, you weren't just a bad owner, you weren't just a bad friend, you weren't just a brat. You were just a bad person. And you still are. I guess this also serves as a good excuse to explain where I've been and also why I recorded all of this. For where I've been, I just haven't had the heart to return to the Twitter or anything like that. And the only reason I even feel the need to bring it up is because I have gotten messages or comments asking where I've been and that they missed talking to me on Twitter, that I was fun to interact with, and I just haven't been online. Like, at first I just really didn't want to see Sue, and it got to a point where I genuinely wanted to unfollow artists that I loved just because they were following Sue, not necessarily because of the association, but because them following her increased the chances of her showing up on my timeline, and it would just make me sad immediately. Like, I genuinely... There is antidepressants, and then there's, like, an instant depressant. Despite the amount of stress I ended up being put under, I, again, do have to, I guess, pause and recognize that a lot of it, or, like, at least a very good chunk of it, was pretty much self-inflicted. So, in a way, I kind of did this to myself. And, well, another thing is that I don't think I ever brought this reason up, so I guess I'm gonna bring it up now. I guess another reason, like, I'm recording this is not just to get it off my chest, like I think I'm gonna say later, but just to, again, by putting my thoughts out there, maybe it'll help her understand it a bit more. But then again, I've never really been good at explaining things, so that's probably too much to expect from how poorly I can explain my thoughts. But it is an attempt to hopefully just at least start something, you know? Get the gears turning and whatnot. I couldn't bring myself to finish certain artworks. I haven't really felt like drawing. There are drawings, but I just don't have that drive. I'm still too nervous to open up one of my art programs, and even though traditional art is better, I just can't bring myself to draw for the sake of myself, which is why I ended up taking up some commissions, but it's a lot harder for me to draw something for myself, because right now I'm under the impression that I shouldn't be left to make my own decisions. And that's ended up bleeding into my artwork. Maybe it's just because of like a bad habit of mine, but I just don't see the value in it anymore, and I I just don't enjoy it anymore. The process isn't fun for me anymore, which is why I've been struggling to draw now. And I think it really sucks because, like, not only did I really enjoy a lot of moments and a lot of people there, but while I was in the server, I actually did get a little bit of my confidence back because I'd been struggling with that up for a good while already. Which is why I was already slowing down drawing earlier in the year, and I started to gain confidence about a lot of things that I didn't really like, such as my art for one thing, but also my voice, and it felt great knowing that, you know, I wasn't, like, my voice wasn't that annoying and that my art had potential. But as time went on and after all of this happened, I kind of can't feel like my potential has just turned into my peak. It has gotten a little bit better over the past few months. Like, I'm still gonna be insecure about my art and compare my art to other people, but it hasn't gotten. It's not nearly as bad as it was before, but I still don't really. I still have a kind of mixed perception of my work and of myself, which is why I haven't really posted anything or finished something that I had planned on posting. And OC I started last year, I think, like last May, funnily enough. Who knows? If I ever show up again, I will. I can't make any promises or guarantees, and that's even if I'm still welcome after this whole thing, because I know that there's a good chance there's a lot of things that I haven't said, either about myself, or even if it wasn't for that, just this could just make me seem like a big petty asshole. But that's the price I gotta pay, I suppose. And I guess speaking of that, I guess this is where I should I should explain why. And I just felt like I needed to get this off my chest. Like, I felt like if I just got this out there and it's recorded, whether it actually goes live or not, and obviously if it goes live, you'll know. If I have it recorded, this isn't just for me to like watch it back, because obviously watching it back would just make me sad or whatever, and it's a lot of time that I could just be doing something else. But I feel like this way I never have a reason to bring it up again, because from, at least for what I have right now in my memory, everything that I could say has already been said, and I never have to touch it again. It's like this kind of, is it therapeutic, cathartic? I don't know what the term is. I don't use big words. But yeah, jokes aside, I'm just kind of hoping this will help me personally. And again, I just didn't want to pretend as if I wasn't the only person who fucked up, even if arguably I was the worst one. And I didn't want to shy away from some of my own wrongdoings as well. That's really all I can say. Oh, right, because yeah, no, it's also because this shit has been bothering me, which is why I wanted to get it out and never want to touch it again, because it unironically kept me awake at night for weeks. It wasn't fun. It was like losing sleep, stressing. I would like sometimes it's not even an impulse. It's like an intrusive thought, but it's like the worst kind of intrusive thought, because like I genuinely would have to stop whatever I was doing, stand up, just walk around and let the thought play out until it's done. But I don't like thinking about this, because it's an instant deterrent. I am already lacking motivation in terms of art already. I really didn't want to keep thinking about this, so again, it's why I'm doing this. Just kind of hoping that some way, somehow, this will help me, like, you know, trick my brain into just letting it go. Whether or not it works, oh well, I can't say that I didn't try at least, right? I think that's everything. Very, strange to try and put this together. I'm probably gonna have to edit a lot of times that I just had to stop and think or pause or just breathe, just to get through this, but yeah, I can't think of anything else to bring up, at least not right now, and hopefully I can make whatever additions I need to before I put this to rest, or at least put this little personal vent project to rest. Jesus Christ, I've been through so much worse shit in my life. Like I've had some horrible things done to me. And this is the shit that bothered me for months? This is the shit that may or may not have long-term effects on me for the foreseeable future. Jesus fucking Christ, I'm pathetic. Well, that was depressing. Who's up for some honorable mentions? Basically, the way this part's gonna work is that I'm just going to come up with some kind of nickname, and then I'm going to, like, say a couple things about the person, just from, you know, what I think about them. Usually something positive, but I do apologize if I do end up saying something negative, especially in regards to the nickname. But I just kind of wanted to end this whole thing on a note of positivity, you know? And I figured that this would be a fun way for me to just kind of cap things off. Obviously, don't harass Sue or anything like that, but especially don't harass any of the people mentioned here. They did not do anything, at least nothing that I am massively hurt by or anything like that. I hold nothing personal towards the people in this section. They're cool. They're fine. They're chilling. Also, harassment is lame as fuck. Not to mention, if what Sue said was true, then I would like to respect everyone's wishes of not wanting to associate with me and just kind of moving past that. So yeah, again, don't bother them. This is just a fun little thing I'm tagging on at the end. In fact, I'm pretty sure some names might be completely omitted because, again, I do wish to respect their wishes. Sue's personal Koi Queen. Carp's pretty cool. They're a nice guy. Had a lot of fun moments. They're genuinely really sweet. We've talked in DMs a couple times and mostly just wish each other well or say goodnight, but he's just nice. He's the kind of guy who will check up on you if he considers you a good friend. He's got a cute OC, Kana, and is a VTuber. I think plays a lot of Final Fantasy and Beat Saber. I don't know what long or I guess shorter experience like AAA games or indie games that he's been playing lately, but feel free to check him out. I will leave a link to the Twitch, but do not tell him that I sent you for obvious reasons. I don't know if they ever went through with that whole evolution concept. Maybe later. Who knows? But yeah, Carp's cool. I like him. He's chill. I hope he's doing alright. Korok and balls. It was either that or Dragny's nuts. I was going to make a balls joke. But, yeah, he was certainly a character. But at the same time, it feels like he started this little thing that I kinda started to notice where, the more unhinged you were in the server, the more likely you were to be really chill outside of it. He's a pretty hardworking guy. He's just an average Joe who just likes to have a good time, even if it's taken to the extreme. He's also fun to talk to. Another Sonic fan and also a huge fan of Transformers. That actually led to a pretty fun conversation we had with a couple other people. I don't remember their names. I think one of them was Flair, and I wish I could remember the rest, but miniature honorable mention to those guys. Oh yeah, he also has this weird ability to be able to guess your height pretty much perfectly using just a picture of your thighs. I don't know how he does it. How the fuck? Overall, pretty fun guy. Pretty fun to hang around with when I was, when I knew him. Also, it was really fun playing Crossworlds with him. That was a blast in the VC, and I am totally down to do that again. I may have made a mod to go alongside another mod that I will reference later again. Blue Eyes White Woman. I think one of the more notable things about her is definitely her art style. Not just her art style, which is usually very pastel and very soft colors, but also the captions that she likes to, you know, right alongside them. I think that's kind of what stands out to me. In terms of personal interaction, she was kind of fun to talk to. Nice lass, chillin', also a bit of a brat a lot of the time, but that was all for the jokes, you know? It was all just for fun, everyone was just having a good time, and it was really funny. It's kind of ironic that she ended up being next because Korok is the person I think she bullied the most. But yeah, hope she's still doing okay. I don't really have anything to complain about besides the fact that I think she's the only person who's actually been directly stated to have made me uncomfortable. But that's in the past, and overall, she's cool. Doji Fushiguro. Yeah, no, I'm not fucking kidding. That's pretty much the perfect nickname for this man. This man draws himself in gray sweatpants and a tight black t-shirt. This man is jacked as hell, and this motherfucker even has a scar. It's not on his lip, but close enough. This man is the real-life Toji Fushiguro to me. But yeah, he's cool. I like him. He's actually the first person to consider me and just straight up call me a friend, and that really meant a lot to me at the time, but I think it meant a lot more to him, which I will not get into. The man's pretty chill, and has even recently helped me through a couple of rough situations. It's actually the reason why I started to second guess whether or not everyone hated me, because it seems like he didn't even know that that was something that was going through my head. Like, the poor guy asked me if I missed Sue. I didn't have the heart to tell him how I felt, so I'm really sorry about this entire rant, my guy. The man himself seems to be doing good nowadays, and I couldn't be happier for him, so props to you, my dude. I hope you continue to get better with everything going on. I'm ecstatic to hear that you've been doing great, and on the off chance that we ever cross paths, I am 100% down to take you out for drinks. I'm not gonna get any for myself, but I mean, I'm offering. Big Brother Short King. Dude's actually someone I've known about for a long time, primarily through Not Safe for Work art, but he was also someone who was pretty fun to talk to. I'm actually kind of surprised that he found it surprising that I liked him for more than just the fact that I knew he existed, because we came to that conclusion because I didn't even recognize him at first. It was fun to talk to. I had a fun time just making fun of him whenever I had the chance. It was also really supportive. Like, he was genuinely just a nice, like, he was a great guy to everyone around him. I think every time he showed up, it was always a good time for everyone involved. With a sneaky honorable mention, there was, I think his name was Damon, so between Lower and Damon, I had a little bit of confidence boost, which was pretty nice. It sucks it never amounts to anything, but honestly, it's the thought that matters, and they're great dudes. I hope they're both doing alright. But yeah, this part's about Lower, and honestly, I think he's a great dude, and honestly, I couldn't have been happier to have called him a brother. He's just chill like that. Beef just gets an honorable mention here just for being the only person to actually apologize for how often I was being objectified. But that moment aside, he is still a pretty nice guy, and I feel like I want to say that just so it's not just the only reason. He was nice. He was just another guy in the server, and he was pleasant to talk to. Ratfucker. Ash is pretty cool. I don't know him as closely as I do some of the other people, but he was always really nice to talk to, especially in the server. Very pleasant guy, very willing to help others, give advice, talk about art and whatnot. I think despite the fact that I was stuck with art myself, I managed to help out whenever I could. He was just always great to have around. A good positive energy that I think everybody needed. Also, rat. The names on the title card are the nicknames that I chose for them because, well, I'm not going to say their real names. I met Maurice first, but because of something that ended up happening, Queen ended up joining the server, and that's how I met Queen. And both of them are really great people, honestly, and especially, like, really fun to talk to. For example, Queen was also a Sonic fan, like, a massive one, and was actually trying to get Maurice into the franchise, and from what I can tell, he's still engaging with it, and I'm hoping that he's enjoying himself. The few times he was actually active in the server, he would stream himself playing some of the games, and honestly, I regret not accepting his invitation to join his little private server. I was just nervous and didn't want to feel out of place. Not to mention, I felt like I would have to like split my attention between all these other things, especially since I was still at college at the time. No, seriously, like the whole thing about like Maurice just now being a Sonic fan, you have any idea how much of a golden ticket that was for me? Any excuse to talk about Sonic is great, but like there's only so much you get to talk about it because everyone already knows, like usually. But like the fact that I could just start from the beginning if I felt like, just spew whatever random facts I knew, like that was great. That was it was awesome. Also, Maurice didn't deserve the bullshit that he went through. That is the only thing I'm going to bring up regarding that, but like, holy shit, I feel so bad for him, and I feel so bad because it was partially my fault. But yeah, no, those two were great, and Queen was always fun to talk to in private as well. I'm just gonna say, has very great taste in the characters that she likes. I don't know if Maurice and Queen are still together, but I hope that they are, and if they aren't, I hope they're still good friends. They're great. I'm just hoping the best for them both. They're awesome. Terror on the dance floor. Panic is also somebody that I don't know super well, but he was nice to talk to whenever I got the chance. I hope he's doing well in school, and I honestly wish him the best moving forward. He's got a cute little idol OC, and he was honestly the only one of the moderators that wanted to do his job. I mean, I can't really blame him for not speaking up sooner a lot of the time when, you know, it's essentially 1 to 100, and he was the one. So every time something went wrong, I don't blame him for pointing out that he had a bad feeling about it, and only held back because he was afraid of being a buzzkill. I get that feeling. Dude's responsible. He's a good guy. He's got his head on straight. And honestly, I really hope last semester treated him well, and I really hope he's doing well in school nowadays. Wishing him luck on his art improvement too. Hobo. Honestly, that was the best I could come up with. Just a pun about the fact that part of his name is Bum. That's all I had. Despite that, he is anything but, and while I don't have too much to say since I don't know him that closely, I can say that there is still plenty to admire. I think one thing that's still pretty strong about him is his angles, like dynamically when it comes to his art, and I think that's pretty impressive and still something I can acknowledge. He's also a pretty cool guy. Even though I don't know him that well, I still did enjoy talking to him. I will say though, whenever he drew me, he had a habit of making me look like a fucking nutcase.
I used to get yelled at.
Cat Thulu. Her VTuber persona is some kind of eldritch cat lady thing from what I remember, so that's kind of what I came up with. I'm not even trying anymore, help me. And yeah, she's pretty fun. Again, someone I didn't interact with too often outside of just appearing on the stream every once in a while, but she was someone I met through the server, and she's pretty cool. She likes rocks. I think the rocks are pretty cool. I hope she's collected plenty of other cool rocks. Hope she's doing well, and again, if anyone's interested, you can find her. Haha, dork. Nerd. Lenny's honestly pretty cool. Again, not someone I talk to super often. In fact, I'm pretty sure out of everyone I've mentioned so far, she's the person I've talked to the least. But she's fun to interact with and great to talk to whenever she's not yelling at one of her other friends on stream. That's kind of also something else. Like, she just has this kind of fun personality that bounces off well with the people around her, and it's fun to see her interact with her friends. Overall, great lass, and I hope she's doing good for herself now. Rocky! She keeps throwing rocks at me, help. Mothie was certainly an interesting character. They were never really to the extreme in the server or out of it, but they weren't exactly like completely silent either. We definitely had some interesting interactions while I knew them, and while I was sometimes confused, I can't say I didn't enjoy interacting with them. They were nice to talk to. On that note, they were actually the person who spoke to me the longest after I had left the server. Like, I think we kept talking up until February before they randomly disappeared, and funnily enough, the last thing we talked about was a commission that they had, showed progress, and then talked about boobs. Truly a very mothy thing. They also had a whole bunch of different OCs, and some of them were either brats and the others were completely schizophrenic. It was an interesting cast of characters that she had come up with. She even commissioned me at one point. Cool snake lady. Though I genuinely do not think that she has a single moth for an OC. Huh, who would have thought? I do hope Mothy's doing pretty okay right now though. I mean, they were pretty cool. I don't really have anything against them. I kind of enjoyed the, you know, occasional check-in every once in a while. Nuna. The name was given to her because there were other names that she wasn't the biggest fan of, in a joking manner of course, so I ended up going with that one. It's actually the only one that's been a nickname before I had to come up with one. Pain is just so sweet. She's always just a pleasure to have around whenever you get to talk to her. Honestly, I think she's just great. She's super supportive, she's super nice, super just fun to talk to, like, just casually and also in a kind of chaotic sense. Like, do not get her started on characters that she likes. You will end up down a rabbit hole. And then there's Zom. I couldn't really figure out a reason to give him his own section, so I guess I'm tying him in here. Zom is cool as hell. The fiance, I think. Both of them are very talented artists, and I hope both of them are doing well nowadays. Honestly, I just appreciate that I got to meet so many cool people, especially Pain. Pain is just fucking rad. And honestly, for the time I knew her, I'm honored that I was able to call her Nuna. She really was like the older family member. And that should tie it up for the honorable mentions. I do apologize if I didn't bring up a very specific name, though I don't think there's a good chance anyone would be offended. If anything, I feel like people would be more offended by what I said, because I just don't have the words to, like, verbalize how I feel about certain people and whether I think they're cool or whether or not they've had, like, a genuinely positive impact on me. I just did the best I could for what I was able to. I will say, it does feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Oh wait, oh fuck! Freerun is the only fitting name for this guy. He's so good. He's so good. I don't know what else to fucking say about him. He was the best of us. Unironically, he really was. This dude was just happy to be there. He was always willing to help out whenever somebody needed it, to just have a good time if that's all that was required. He was just... he was there for everybody, actually. Despite anything that could be going on with his own life, he's just... he's good. He's just good. I do not have words. I don't, even during the worst of the chaos, he was just happy to be there and take part in it in his own, like, unique way. He was always just like this calm voice of reason that I think balanced out everything else going on in the server. And he was just really fun to talk to. He was just a great guy, a great companion. He was a great friend to genuinely anybody who could talk to him. I lack the proper thoughts and vocabulary to, like, explain what makes this guy so good, because he's just a good person at heart. You genuinely just have to meet the guy. I'm so glad, if nothing else, that I met him and got to know him for the short time that I did, because he's genuinely just an incredible person. I spent this entire rant talking about how my self-esteem was completely and utterly destroyed, but, like, even back then, when it was pretty much the same, when this man walked into the room, everything got better. I swear to God. Dude draws, like, these cute little elves in his spare time too, and, like, that's always nice. I feel like that's something else that I can say besides just talking about how good of a person that he is. Dude, on the off chance you ever see this, if this ever goes live, I genuinely hope nothing but the best for you. I hope your heart keeps beating for a long time. I hope you enjoy drawing your little elves. And I hope you continue to catch plenty of fish in your off time. Just have a good one, dude. Well, that's pretty pretty much everything that could be said, I think. I mean, there's probably more I could, but I think I got all the important stuff out of the way, so anything else that pops up into my head, I'll deal with it on my own time. I do know this is probably an incoherent mess, and I do apologize, but again, this wasn't really much of an expose. It was a personal vent, a rant to just clear my own head, which is probably why there isn't going to be really many screenshots or quote-unquote evidence, because frankly, I don't really care. Like, my goal here is just to vent out my frustration, not to expose or deplatform somebody. So, yeah, this is the end. Thank you for listening to my ramblings. And hey, if you have the time, if there's anyone that you care about, just get up, go give them a hug, you know? Family, spouse, whoever. You can't physically hug someone? Send someone a hug through like a GIF or something. You got no one to send a hug to? Then just wrap your arms around yourself and give yourself a hug. Because everybody deserves a hug. Right, Sue?